Chapter 11, Escape and Reunion New Allies. Part 1. Outside in the wretches' camp, chaos ensued as rain of fire fell from heaven, striking down any wretches bandits that were fortunate enough to be in the path of destruction. The spell, Rain of Fire, is an area of effect spell exclusive to the Warlock class in the Warcraft universe. Surprisingly, the caster is none other than the good old Professor Sunreach, whom everyone thought was a mage. Go find the boy, I'm sure he's somewhere in there. The old elf pointed at the burning infernal ahead of them to Aetha's father, whom without any thought dove head on and cleaving down any wretches that get in his way. Back to Aethas and the Forsaken assassin who managed to escape from the dungeon that kept them in captivity for who knows how long already. When they finally got outside, what greeted them was a sea of flame caused by the fallen rain of fire from above. Was it your people? Aethas asked, noticing that rain of spell was a spell mostly belonged to the warlock, and he couldn't help but to associate the Forsaken with all the dark and evil stuff on the back of his mind, only to earn the displeasure from the dead woman. Hey! That's rude. Sure, we may have warlock in our ranks, but I don't think there's anyone that powerful in our unit here in the Ghostlands expedition, she retorted. Look over there, isn't that your people fighting? She then pointed to a clash up ahead, where an all too familiar figure is going berserk and cleaving down anything that get in his way. That means it's a group of unfortunate wretches bandits, and it seemed like he noticed them too. Aethas. Just hang in there. Daddy will be over in just a moment. Asterisk snack. The great sword bisected the skinny wretch, armor included, and sprayed blood and guts all over his body. Family of your. Why don't I see the resemblances? She joked. Don't worry, you are not the only one who noticed that. Aethas retorted, it is true all of their neighbors back in the village thought that they don't resemble anything like father and son. Like who in the hell would believe an ORC like elf to father a son who looks like an angel? Absolutely no one, but in the end, Aethas was glad to have such a father though, even in the end if he is just a bonehead, all brawn and no brain for most things all considered. 1. Before long, his father had finally finished the last of the wretches and littered the ground with their blood and guts, creating a hellish scene on earth along with the fire and arson in the background which were caused by Professor Sunreach. His father immediately rushed over and dropped his blade and hugged him tightly as tears flowing from his eyes. The man is crying. Who would have thought that the warrior that put fear into his enemy with his brutality would cry when he grabbed hold of his son? I am so sorry. You must have been scared. I swear in the name of the Sindore that this will never happen again, he continued to sob. Many did not know this, but Aethas' father loved his family more than his own life after what happened to his own sister during the destruction of the Sunwell, where his sister who followed their prince into Outland and went missing in action. As reported after their expedition force retreated back to Azeroth, losing his own blood sister is hard enough, but losing his son on top of that? If that were the case, he would make sure every single wretch in the kingdom of Quel'Thalas died with his son. None of them will ever allow to live. Stop crying, Dad, I'm not hurt and you came and rescued me, so what is there to be sad about? He hugged the elf back. After another round of sobbing, the elf finally calmed down and his stoic work face returned. His gaze finally landed on the Forsaken woman next to his son. He was taken back to see an undead of course, but after reading on the description of their new ally the Forsaken, he knew that they would not cause them harm, yet. Aethas' father still hadn't trusted their new ally fully yet, as they were former agent of the Scourge, their hated enemy, but now seeing that this undead helped his son escape. Captain Theramir of the 14th Fast Rider Unit, at your service, he took the initiative and grabbed the undead cold bony hand. Thank you for looking after my son, we will do whatever it takes to help your people effort against the Scourge in the Ghostlands, he told her. On behalf of the Dark Lady herself, I thank you Captain. She replied back in courtesy. Of course Aethas already know who this Dark Lady was, the Banshee Queen Sylvanas Windrunner, former Ranger General of the Kingdom of Quel'Thalas. 4. Part 2. Aethas and the convoy along with their new friends, the Forsaken assassin went their merry way straight for Tranquillion, the heart of the Ghostlands territory. The trip was quite uneventful as there were no incidents or attacks other than some random beasts like giant bats swooping down from time to time, but they were easily taken care of by the snippers. Of course, Aethas took his chance to ask Professor Sunreach in secret about his actual profession, which definitely isn't a mage as he claimed to be, because during the raid on the wretches camp, he noticed that the professor cast the following spells: Rain of Fire, Incinerate, Immolate, and many other spells that were exclusive to the warlock class. He could see why the elf would disguise himself as a fire mage. Surprisingly, the old elf did not deny his association with the demonic magic, but of course as his new teacher, the elf asked Aethas to keep this little secret between them. Sure, Blood Elf Society doesn't view practitioner of demonic magic to be as extreme like the necromancer who served the Lich King, however it doesn't mean that they don't receive any prejudice once they were discovered. Knowing this, Aethas complied with the old elf requested, but of course Aethas wouldn't let such a great opportunity gone to waste. The old elf was a bona fide, certified warlock with experiences. Aethas would definitely ask him for tips on the art of summoning as there are many things he wanted to try. After hearing his disciple requested him to teach him the demonic arts, Professor Sunreach twitched a little. Isn't this kid a bit too greedy? Teaching him common magic is one thing, but for him to lead his disciple, Astrid, into the hands of the demons? But seeing Aethas giving him the puppy eyes, Professor Sunreach couldn't bear to say no, but of course, he would teach the boy only under strict supervision. This is great. You are the best teacher. Aethas flattered the old elf with flowery words, and with that, during their trip to Tranquillion, it wasn't that uneventful anymore as there would be something for Aethas to do. Of course it was in complete secret he finally can put his massive reserve of mana into good use, and by the time they reached Tranquillion, Aethas had already mastered the basic spell of the Warlock class and could probably officially call himself a level 1 Warlock, based on the game standard. For he had learned the spell, Incinerate, and Summon Imp, but of course Professor Sunreach prohibited Aethas from using the Summon Imp spell, as it would cause problem for himself because he was known as Aethas' magical instructor, and secondly Aethas' father would definitely murder him for the reason of, you are a bad influencer. You've led my son astray, and thus a great sword cleaved the old poor Professor Sunreach in half without a shred of mercy. But back to present about Tranquillion, their new home. If Athas had any opinion, it would be that their new home is quite lively. Ironically, the town population is Forsaken majority for population, only a small percentage of them are blood elves. The town itself was no doubt quite prosperous despite its odd location, seeing how the street is filled with the local populace, Forsaken, bartering and selling exotic goods that caused the group of new resident, Athas convoy, to find quite strange and disturbing. Things such as random eyeballs, humanoid limbs and that of animals, just to name a few. In the end, they just put it in as different cultures have their own uniqueness, which is the same for their own race, the Blood Elves, which like to thrive in the eternal spring and sunshine of the kingdom of Quel'Thalas, unlike their former kin, the Kaldore, also known as the former Highborn, and now their faction enemy, the Night Elves, who live in eternal twilight under the light of the moon. This place is great, with much sarcasm, so where's our house? Athas asked his father and mother, whom just looked at one another and smiled dryly. Seeing this, Athas had a bad feeling. No, it's a horrible feeling, and his gut feeling was right. By the time they arrived at their residence, no, it's anything but a resident. If he had words to describe it, it would be a goddamn haunted house. Athas swore he could see spectral ghosts floating out of the building. Not to be offended, he doesn't really mind it at all, but being a former human on Earth and knowing about the bad reputation of any haunted house, Athas, now glad that he had some knowledge about necromancy and having a warlock for a teacher, accompanied his family for this trip. Chapter 12, Beginning of an Empire. More lost knowledge. Part 1. It didn't take long for Athas and his family to settle down in Tranquillion. It has been a week since the day they arrived. Life goes on and continued, as they say. Athas, let's go out and play. Valira nagged him as she broke into his private domain, which also known as his room. As for why Valira still hanging around him for over a week already, the reason was she somehow convinced both of his parents to allow her to stay, and to his surprise, they agreed. It's outrageous. This is kidnapping. To make matters worse, his dad sent a letter back to her parents and informed them of what is actually going on. Such as telling the poor girl parents that their daughter had been accepted into a noble organization, militia, mercenaries, that is the Farstrider, and became his personal page. One can imagine how excited they must have been. Thus it is without any problem that they accepted the fact that their daughter Valira will be staying in the Ghostlands for quite some time. Don't you have any training to do, Valira? You can't just drag me out to play all day. Athas replied to the energetic girl in annoyance. It was true. For the past week, she'd been dragging him out into the town, either sightseeing or worse, directly into the wilderness to hunt games, which include and not limited to bats, lynx, and sometime mana WYRM, if there's even any left. Rather than doing all of these activities, Athas preferred to just stay home in his tower and study arcane knowledge with his teacher, Professor Sunreach, whom is a retired warlock. And no, please, I just want to do some spell practice today. Maybe next time, Valira. Athas continued. That is all he wanted to do. Throughout the years, Athas seemed to develop a bad habit that all mages tend to have, the addiction to studying and hoarding knowledge. Valira grinned upon seeing Athas' reaction to her usual antic. She too knew that he would refuse to go out and play with her, thus she prepared a secret weapon. Your mother ordered you to go outside. It would be a disappointment if I were to inform her that you refused to comply. This immediately brought Athas to a halt. This little girl, since when did he train her to be this evil and cunning? Oh wait, he himself isn't that of a good person either. Either way, look, he doesn't have much of a choice either. The last person that he wanted to piss off in this world was none other than his mother. She can be scary when she's angry. 2. Alright, I'll bite the bait. Where and what are we killing today? Athas could only let out a long sigh, seemingly accepting his fate for what to come. Who said we are killing anything today? Do I look like that type of girl to you? She pouted. Then what are we doing today? His questions were only met with silence and being dragged and leaping out through the window and landed on a red hawkstrider down below. The weight of the two children caused the creature to squawk and jumped in surprise before it was being guided by Valira and took off on the road. 2. Of course, Athas, like any normal mortal in the world, screamed for his life at the breakneck speed that they were traveling on. Are you even old enough to get a license for this? He screamed. Of course. I am the top of my class for this. Even your dad praised me. Valira retorted while at the same time, brag about her achievement. Old man, I swear I will set your hair on fire the moment I return. Just you wait. Athas cursed loudly as they passed curious pedestrians while kicking up a ruckus along the way. The locals seemed to not bother by this scene anymore, as they have already seen this as a daily occurrence with a new resident, plus being the local wealthy landowner and generous with the local population, they don't really care for such antics. This brought back the fact that the day after arrival, Athas' mother immediately put her massive capital into good use by investing in local businesses and buying up lands surrounding Tranquillion and the abandoned villages nearby, which practically cost close to nothing. Thus the locals have quite a positive opinions about their family, first by helping them fight scourge and secondly contributing to the local economy. Ah, how nice it is to be young, a Forsaken woman said in a raspy voice that her half-decomposed voice box could produce while smiling. Aren't we to look like that when we were young? I remember a day back in Lordaeron, said the man with a rotting face next to her before pulling for a smooch, lip to lip. If Athas was there to witness such a scene, the first thing we would do is running into a bush, hiding from the old rotting couple and puke his guts out. Not to be rude, but anyone witnessing such a scene would end up losing a piece of themselves afterward. 2. Part 2. Their journey took them half an hour, riding at top speed on the hawkstrider before they finally arrived at their destination, which to Athas' surprise, was an old abandoned arcane sanctum. Valira, don't tell me this is what you wanted me to see. Athas asked with the look of surprise still on his face. Yes, I know you like studying knowledge about magic, thus where else would I want to bring you, she said in a low but shy tone of voice. Athas swore he could see her glowing pink while speaking those words, looking at the long abandoned arcane sanctum below. It turned out this trip wasn't so bad after all, he thought, knowing there must be lost knowledge buried below in the rubble. Let go on a treasure hunt. Immediately Athas grabbed her hand and took off down to the sanctum. While being held by the boy, Valira couldn't help but blushed even further. Along the way, they were met with the local wildlife that inhabited the old broken down arcane sanctum, which include mana WYRM and mana elemental. Let's just say there is way too many of them gathering here, and that draining and destroying a few won't harm the general population. Looking at the broken down sanctum up close, Athos can somewhat make out the words, Sanctum of the Moon, on the old broken down stone tablet that was worn down by the ages. Seeing this, Athos couldn't help but grin like an evil villain. Sanctum of the Moon, huh? Look like we hit a jackpot, and it's all thanks to you, my beautiful and talented secretary. As fact already stated, they are currently on top of the ruins of the Sanctum of the Moon, quoted to be the testament of the mastery of the arcane, by none other than Alleria Windrunner herself during the glory of the kingdom of Quel'Thalas. Now all that is left are ruins and rubble, but of course being a sorcerer himself and the disciple of a powerful former warlock now mage, Professor Sunreach, he learned a method of twin discovering lost arcane knowledge. 2. Let's look for the focusing core of the sanctum. Hopefully it is still intact when the former denies and abandons this mana factory. Athos told her, even though the hope of digging one up might be close to zero, but if they do manage to find it, even if it was damaged, it could help their people, mostly the Blood Elves population in Ghostlands, with a source of magic to feed on, instead of scraping every bit of magic they can get from anything that remotely felt magical. But where are we going to find it? And how do you even know that it even there? Plus, is there a reason why you would want such a thing? Valira looked confused. Athos could only sigh at her ignorance while, quote, ignorance can be such a bliss. I don't, just have a sliver of hope. If we manage to find it, Professor Sunreach and the other sorcerers can probably create a makeshift mana generator using the local ley line, which could supply the entire town with powers for years to come. He enlightened the girl, to which she finally understood his attention. She too knew well of the suffering their people have to gone through after the destruction of the Sunwell. She knew her parents were facing such difficulty as well, controlling their thirst for mana and crying quietly from time to time at night. If they could find such object here, and Athos, along with Professor Sunreach, could recreate such device. Athos, if you and Professor Sunreach could recreate such device, do you think my parents could move here as well? She looked at him with eyes full of hope. Of course, you silly girl. Why else would I want it for? My own amusement and the foundation for my conquest on this world? No. I want to save the mana addiction of our people. Athos proclaimed proudly, only to notice Valira giggling at him. He could only turn his head away in embarrassment, thinking, why the hell did I say such a thing? Chapter 13, Aberration. I can do it too. Athos and Valira continued to wander around the abandoned sanctum that had fallen ruin to the ages, looking for any possible clues for treasures and hidden knowledge. Based on Athos' knowledge about ancient arcane sanctum that was recorded down in books and many other literature, Athos can somewhat reference these structures to a type of ancient, nuclear, power plant and thermal energy plant back on Earth. If there was any similarity, these structures had one purpose. And that one purpose only that is to generate as much power as possible under a certain period of time. Of course, the energy has to be under control, else it would just be a disaster. Just like all power plants back on Earth, the Arcane Sanctum also needed a place to store their excess powers, along with a key component that generate those powers in the first place, and that is what Athos was looking for, the keystone of the Arcane Sanctum, along with any possible crystallized mana that were left untouched when the population abandoned the region to escape back to Eversong and Silvermoon. Athos, look at this. Valira quickly went to where Athos was while holding a small piece of purple crystal that is radiating with ancient mana from the ley line. This is no doubt what Athos was looking for. Ancient mana. Based on a description from the wiki, ancient mana is basically crystallized mana from the ley line beneath the ancient city of Surmar, but in the end, it is just crystallized mana from the ley line. And where does all Arcane Sanctum were built on? You guessed it. Ley line. Great work. Where did you find this? Athos asked her. With this clue it showed they were on the right track, or at least close to where the source is. Valira then pointed at a pile of broken shelf full of worn-out books where their words are barely visible anymore. Unfortunate case, but most of it were completely rotten for being exposed to the elements. Seeing that their path is blocked by such obstacle, Athos cracked his knuckles while looking at the pile of debris. One can guess that he is ready for a spell incantation. Valira, you might want to move away. I'm going to put what Professor Sunreach taught me to good use. Hearing that, Valira quickly moved behind him and stared with curiosity. After knowing Professor Sunreach for years back in Eversong, if there's one thing Athos could confidently tell anyone about the old elf, is that he is the master of fire magic. Or in many cases, anything that is related to the art of setting things on fire. Enchanting and disenchanting is only secondary to him, and as for magic theories and researching into arcane knowledge, that is just a hobby. By now Athos has successfully managed to gather a percentage of mana from himself and weaved it into a small infernal between the palm of his hands. This is the spell that Athos had successfully mastered under the tutelage of his teacher. Incinerate, he called out the name of the spell, which is one of the basic spells of the destruction specialization of the warlock class. Maybe it was due to the amount of mana that Athos had built for himself over the years, but just 2% of that amount put into the spell is enough to completely vaporize the debris that was in front of him, leaving a charred scar radiating an intense amount of heat and revealing a pathway before them, after which Athos couldn't help but let out a long high-pitched whistle, seeing the amount of destruction he can cause with just one spell. Just love the smell of burning books in the morning. Wait, no. Wrong. Books are precious. Those who burn books kill knowledge. But whatever, these books are no longer readable anyways. Athos shrugged. It wasn't much of a loss to him anyway. If they left such tome lying about in the public area, he doubted they would worth much. What really juicy are hidden deeper within the sanctum and locked away to keep the public from ever laying eyes on them. Those are the real treasures. To which might hidden ahead of them. With that said, they venture deeper into the maw of darkness itself, on the path that is littered with crystallized mana. Either on the ceiling, the wall or the very ground they walked on, it was saturated with magic. Even the air they breathe in cannot escape the mana radiation, as it too was filled to the brim with mana. Can you feel it, Valira? Of what's ahead, there's a huge condensed power just up ahead. His eyes glowed brightly as the pressure from the passage ahead of them seeped into his skin, causing his hair to stand right up. They were very close. When the two children reached the end of the ancient passageway where a massive door stood, being children and curiosity overwhelmed them, they pushed it open. What greeted them was just awe, perhaps mixed with a portion of sheer terror as they laid their eyes to what's in front of them, a mass of unstable arcane energy concentrated in an area deep underground. Part 2. Isn't it beautiful, Valira? Athos asked the girl, witnessing such a mass of power, left untouched for so long caused one to be baffled at such a phenomenon. There are many questions Athos wished to ask after seeing such a scene, such as, why the Scourge didn't make use of this power, or, why does no one seem to pick up on this at all, only to turn around and found that Valira is frozen in fear just from the pure pressure giving off from the arcane anomaly. Unfortunately, his question is soon to be answered as the mass of power began to give off pulse of arcane waves that radiated its surrounding and energized them to an extreme state. Oh crap, we need to get out. Now, noticing that something is wrong, Athos quickly pushed Valira down. As soon as he pushed her down, an even stronger wave of power blast out, followed by a deep furious howl. Freedom from the arcane anomaly, born an aberration made from purely of arcane energy take form into the physical world. If one could describe the children's situation, it would be extremely bad. They need to get out of the sanctum immediately. Screw the keystone and ancient knowledge. There's no point in that if they can't live to use it. Plus they quickly need to warn the local militia. However, it doesn't look like it was possible as the creature shot out a beam of energy and collapsed their only escape route and trapping the children inside the chamber. Shit, we are so dead. Athos' last shred of hope of escaping alive vanished the moment the tunnel collapsed. Athos, are we going to die? Valira asked in a shaky voice, finally understanding their current situation. Well, my beautiful secretary, that might be the case if we don't find a way to escape. That is hopeless to begin with. After quickly looking around, Athos can't seem to find any possible escape route. This chamber is like a prison if there's a better word to describe it. Die mortal. I shall never be imprisoned again. The creature quickly turned hostile toward the innocent children below and began to amass mana, ready to launch an attack to obliterate them from the world of the living. Seeing imminent death, Athos steeled his nerve. He too himself ready to launch the first attack before the monster. He turned back to Valira, who surprising already knocking her bow and shot a couple of arrows at the creature. Well, at least we are doing something. Athos thought as he smiled. Time to go all out. Incinerate. Athos launched a blazing streak of infernal at the mana elemental, blasting a chunk out of the monster and interrupting its casting ability. Puny mortal. How dare you? The mana elemental is enraged after being interrupted by an insignificant ant that did dwarf over in both size and power. Seeing that its spell was interrupted, the creature began conjuring up mana elemental to attack. You think that you are the only one who can summon minion? Valira. Buy me some time, it's time to show this monster that we are weakling and just wait to be slaughtered. With the air of a commander around him, Athos ordered the girl whom quickly rained down arrows upon the numberless mana surges that wanted to rip them apart. Athos himself utilized this chance and immediately called forth another skill that the warlock class gained infamy from in this universe, the art of conjuring forth demons. Although this might be a bad idea as conjuring demons and controlling them had to be done through laborious effort, such as subduing the creature and force it into the warlock's service through the domination of will or master and servant contract, else the creature will just be a menace to all. But that is just what Athos needed right now. Summon, imp. A magic circle radiated and a small sprite engulfed in pale flame appeared and shooting fireball like it was fireworks. However, Athos doesn't stop there. He continued to put in even more of his mana to call forth more horror from the twisting nether, and Athos doubted that he lacked anything but mana itself here. It wasn't all for naught and soon a terrifying creature heard of his summon, but it seems like Athos got more than he had bargained the moment he laid his eyes on the creature that stepped forth from the portal. Who dare summon me? The great Annihalash, roared the giant creature that looks like a massive lizard with 6 limbs with a humanoid torso with tusks and wings with flames blazing. This creature is without a doubt a species of Annihilan, better known as the Pit Lords. 2. Asterisk bang. The arcane anomaly shot a ball of concentrated arcane energy at the face of the Pit Lord and broke off a tusk. Okay, this might work. That all Athos could muster out in words after witnessing the stupid action of the arcane elemental. Chapter 14, Monster Against Monster. Well, I found it. Part 1. Puny creature. You dare to attack the great Annihalash. It seemed like the attack from the aberration of mana are ineffective against the monstrous Pit Lord, causing the demon to become enraged and charge at the elemental. I think we might have a shot at this. Athos whispered to Valira, trying to keep a low profile in the chaotic fight between the two monsters. Imp, what are you waiting for? Go and attack. Athos ordered his demonic imp, who seems to share the same idea as himself, to keep away from the fight. Master. Hold on, I have a better idea. Why not us wait for those brute to destroy themselves and we reap the reward, the imp suggested. Well, that's my business. What's the point of summoning you if you can't help me fight? Athos sneered at the pitifully cunning little creature. Ah, my master, that is where you are wrong. Risklop has a lot of use. But fighting is never one of them, the demon bargained. If I were to join the fight, it will draw attention to you and the mistress. Then everyone would die. Yes. Die. Ha ha ha. However, if made to keep me here, I can help you look for treasures. Yes, treasures. Risklop good at finding treasures. We can split it 50-50. What do you say? The demon eyes shone with greed as it glanced at its surrounding. Athos, you can't possibly trust this demon. Valira whispered to Athos, even without experience or knowledge, she knows for a fact that demon cannot be trusted, based on instinct alone. All right, Risklop, we have ourselves a deal, but where are we supposed to find any treasures in this chaotic mess? He questioned the cunning little devil. Don't worry about that, master and mistress. In the name of the contract. I shall serve my master faithfully, the creature swore. Of course, Athos know for a fact that Risklop will try to exploit any possible loophole that could bring itself benefits. Then my master, mistress, let us wait and witness your servant true prowess. Risklop proclaimed. Just from the tone alone, Athos and Valira can safely assume that this creature is very egoistic, but at least this thing can be somewhat trustworthy, as the contract between servant and master are absolute. If it were to go against him, being banished or imprisoned is the least of it worry. As a warlock apprentice, Professor Sunreach made sure to teach him the method of punishing his minions if there's a day that they goes against his will. After letting Risklop snoop around a bit undetected, the little imp finally managed to pick up on something. Master! I pick up a source of magic here, the creature called out to him. He could see what the little imp was talking about. It was a trunk placed under a pile of rubble covered in magical runes. It looked promising, yes. However, the main problem is, the trunk is behind the enemy line, which now include a rampaging pit lord in the mess. Die! Annihalash roared as the monstrosity stomped both of its front foot onto the stone, creating a fiery infernal of fire, annihilating the mana surges that was summoned forth by the arcane aberration. The storm felt like a minor earthquake as the entire structure itself vibrates under the force, of course being the engine of destruction and carnage itself. Annihalash didn't just stop there and body slam the arcane elemental into the wall and give it a hard beat down with a fist covered in Felsteel spikes. The arcane elemental howled in pain as the Felsteel spike ripping of mana off from its body. However, this is not the end, as their location is right above the drill point of the ley line. The arcane elemental quickly made use of such advantages and began draining power from the ley line itself and heal its damaged body. Why won't you die? Annihalash pushed on the offense. Of course, the mana elemental doesn't just let itself be a punching bag. The aberration clawed and bite the demon with its arcane energized claws and teeth, burning the demon with each attack. As for Athas, Valeera and Risklop, the three went unnoticed under the chaos and destruction caused by the two titans. If there's a better words to describe the situation of the fight, Athas could concluded that this will be a draw and most likely ended in mutual destruction, assuming the pit lord don't just randomly rip a portal and ran back to the twisting nether and abandon the fight altogether. However, it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. The mana elemental had riled up the angry pit lord way beyond the point of salvation. Now the demon just want the creature dead at all cost. Part 2. Using the giant distraction that is the summoned pit lord, Athas stealthily went to the area that the imp pointed him to and pushed away the rubble and debris that's around. It looked like an ancient enchantment of some sort. Athas mumbled as he placed his hand on the trunk and felt the ancient mana coursing through his finger. Well, no shit, genius. Oh, my apology, master. I have a bad habit of screwing cursed. Existing in the twisting nether can change someone as noble as I, quite drastically. Risklop ran to the trunk and pulled out a small stone with an evil-looking rune carved on it. Lo and behold! Witness the prowess of I. Risklop, the treasure hunters of worlds. The plunderer, the little minions gave a little speech before smacking the stone onto the lock, creating a small explosion and kicking up dust. What the hell, you little shit? Athas cursed as he tried to cover Valeera, who was next to him, from the shards of stones and dust flying outward of the explosion. Luckily, it seems like no matter how much of a ruckus they caused, the two monsters that is currently fighting for dominance is too busy to notice them. Alright, let's see what's inside. Athas opened the trunk, and the content were revealed to his eyes, which is a pile crystallized mana crystals. However, this one seemed different from the rest that were laying around the corridors and passageways. Well, that was a waste, just a bunch of crystallized mana crystal. Here I thought it would be some artifact. Athas cited, in the end, it's just mana crystal, but at least it would be of some use once he managed to bring this trunk back to Tranquillion. But of course, he had to find a way to get out of here first. Hey Risklop, is there a way out of here? Feeling that it's pointless to stay here any longer and get caught in this hot mess, Athas couldn't help but made the foolish action of asking a demon for help, of course, being a demon Risklop. My apology, master, but I doubt my option would, well, be healthy for your well-being. Risklop answered. Athas could already guessed it a trip to the twisting nether, not the best place for kids to be in, since the place is infested with demons and horror from the dark beyond. But I don't think you have to look for that route to escape, master. As you can see, it looks like those two brutes are about to be done, well, maybe for the pit lord. Risklop commented, seeing that the pit lord body had been horribly mutilated. You need a way to prevent that arcane elemental from regenerating. Cut off its power supply. Risklop pointed out. We have to locate the focusing keystone. That's what must be supply the arcane elemental. Valeera voiced her opinion. Of course, she isn't the only one who thought of that plan, but the problem was, where is the damn keystone hidden? You mean this thing right here? However, beyond Athas' expectation, Risklop dug out a rune cover stone from its pouch and showed it the two children's. Are you messing with me, Risklop? Athas couldn't help but to have the urge of chaining up this little bastard and burn its soul for years to come. Now what's going to happen to that arcane elemental? Valeera couldn't help but to voice out her curiosity. Technically, it should feel the effect of regeneration weakened the moment the focusing keystone was taken away. However, it seemed like the pit lord is doing a nice job of keeping it distracted. My power! What is happening? The mana elemental howled, feeling its power being weakened considerable, and the regeneration effect had long been stopped. Seeing the arcane elemental regenerating effect had disappeared, Annihalash laughed menacingly and continued its vigorous rampage using the last of its vitality. Be destroy, the pit lord bellowed and grabbed tightly onto the arcane aberration and ready itself for self-destruction. Master, mistress, I think you might want to find some cover. Risklop advised the two children, knowing how dangerous a pit lord can be at the moment of death before it returning to the twisting nether. Upon picking up what Risklop was trying to warn them, he immediately pulled Valeera behind a large fallen pillar and duck. What happened next almost ruptured their drums. Asterisk boom. Asterisk crash. Asterisk crash. The pit lord Annihalash blows itself up and brought half of the chamber down with it. All Athas hope for is that the arcane elemental perish alongside that piece of madness from the twisting nether. Did both of them perish together? Valeera asked, clearly shaken up by the event that happened today. Clearly this too is more adventure than she could have bargained for. Hopefully it is, dear God. Just how resilient is this thing? Look like they had their hopes up too high. When the dust finally cleared, the figure of the arcane aberration can still be seen. However, this one is clearly weakened to the extreme and is fizzling out from the plane of existence. Just stay right here, I'll be right back. Athas gently patted Valeera's head before heading toward the residue of the arcane elemental. Athas! Wait, stop. Valeera tried to follow her crush, however Risklop grabbed hold of her hand. I don't think you want to get in between what he's about to do, the little demon advised. Chapter 15, The Ceiling, Standing Among Peers. Part 1. Aethas stand before the near-dead door arcane elemental fearlessly. The monster stared at Aethas with endless hatred in its eyes, ready to rip him into pieces. This is what you want, right? Aethas held up the focusing keystone in his hand, taunting the aberration. Right now the only thing that could possibly save it from the brink of mana exhaustion, which is deadly in the case of a creature that was made of pure mana, is this object which held a control over the leyline power and the surrounding mana. The arcane elemental immediately rushed toward him. Like hell I would let you have it. Aethas quickly tossed the keystone aside, attracting the creature attention which gave him a brief window of time for his secret trump card. What remnant of your power is now mine? Drain life, another warlock ability that was taught to Aethas by his teacher, the skill that sucked the essence of a creature and benefit the caster, a sinister vampiric skill. However, Aethas had thought of another possibility for this spell. Aethas! What are you doing? Run! Quickly get out of there! Valira shouted. My mistress! Can you not see what the master is trying to do? He is draining the very essence of the creature and absorbing it for himself. Such ingenious move. Risklop cannot be give his master. Aethas praises if his master were to succeed, his power would receive a qualitative changes. It wouldn't be that bad serving such a master. Risklop dream of becoming a demon lord wouldn't just be a dream anymore. Just accept your fate already. Aethas roared at the wailing aberration of mana, whom was struggling with all of it might, trying to break free and get away at all cost, clawing itself into the stone floor of the chamber while howling. Seeing this scene, Aethas pressed on more pressure and increased the output power of his drain life spell. Slowly the arcane elemental body began to get absorbed into the palm of his hand, bit by bit. Arg! Damn it! Just die already! The raw power of the creature, even if it's only a shadow of its former self, is enough to cause burns on his arms, which then extended up into his body, caused Aethas to growl in agony. The massive amount of mana flowing through Aethas right now is enough to cause his blood vein to glow vibrantly by the time he finished absorbing the last drop of mana from the monster, leaving only a rolling blue core behind. God damn it. Finally arg the pain. The only comparison he had for the amount of agony he gone through right now is getting run over by a train. He wailed on the ground. Aethas! Valira quickly ran over to Aethas to check on his condition. When she got there, Valira was shocked and horrified seeing the extensive amount of damage he had suffered. His hands were blackened and cracked with mana residue gushing out. I'm fine, Valira. This is nothing but a scratch. He chuckles. With great power comes great agony, or so that's what they said. Look like it is indeed true. How are you feeling, my master? Risklop appeared and questioned his master with great expectations. The feeling is just great. Aethas slowly stood up now after the pain has subsided. He could feel the power coursing through his very blood. Aethas knew that he had saturated every single cells within his body to their limit capacity, and with a flip of his hand, a blast of pure condensed arcane energy crashed onto the debris that had previously blocked their path of escape. This could be quite addicting. Aethas looked down on his hands and contemplated. His parents are going to question him about these battle injuries most likely. Another fact is, since the battle is over, it's time to gather his loot and get the hell out of this place. The keystone and the arcane core definitely needed to be collected. He could use those materials to possibly craft epic quality if not legendary artifact in the future. Sure, it might be a far-fetched dream, but when you are young, dream big, they said. Valira, help me gather up as much treasure as possible. We need to get out of here, he ordered. Valira was stunned for a moment before she snapped back and quickly picked up as many crystallized mana crystal and stuffed them into her satchel, and as for Aethas, he had already pocketed the two most important items already. Risklop, your share will be what remained in that trunk. 50% of the amount we have looted today. Our deal is complete. You may return to the twisting nether. Risklop has no complaint or much to complain anyway. He could not waste his object as it is indeed true. 50% of the loot. Summon me more often, master. I shall serve you faithfully from now on. The imp laughed before a failfire magic circle appeared beneath him and the tiny imp exploded. Part 2. The once peaceful town of Tranquillion now busy with activity as workers moved back and forth, dragging stones and bricks toward the construction site. It has been 4 months since the day Aethas retrieved the keystone from the Sanctum of the Moon. His goal now was, with the instruction of Professor Sunreach and the fellow mages, construct a new arcane sanctum, one that is large enough to supply the town with endless mana and possibly the entire Ghostlands region once it is fully reclaimed. Aethas was now currently walking around the site, viewing and overseeing the progress that had been done thus far. Strangely enough, both of his hands were wrapped with the thick clothes of silk acting as bandages. Of course, the injuries had completely healed. However, the remnant, the scar, is still there. Aethas wanted to hide these injuries away from the public eyes as to not draw attention to himself. It would be strange if one were to see a child walking down the road with both of his hands shown visible burn scar with glowing veins. Foreman, when is the expected time that this sanctum be completed? He asked the elf with a yellow hard hat, holding the blueprint of what seemed to be a giant castle tower. Oh boss. Glad to see you here. If everything goes according to plan, your sanctum will be completed in another 6 months. The foreman told him to Aethas. 6 months is indeed a long time, seeing that they only managed to dig out the foundation and completed laying the groundwork just a week prior. However, thinking of all the process that had to go through for the sanctum to activate, he couldn't possibly voice his complaints. The building itself, the materials that needed to be transported, the labor force that needed, the coins that those workers want, and finally the mages shifting and directing the ley line. After Aethas finished a tour of the construction site, he quietly walked back home to his teacher, Professor Sunreach Resident, which is a renovated spire that were abandoned years ago but now purchased over to Aethas' family. Ah, my dear apprentice, you are finally returned to see your teacher. How was the note I gave you? Any inspiration? Demon summoning can be quite dangerous. You must always make preparations, the old elf advised. During those 4 months, Aethas did nothing but to seek more knowledge from his teacher on the dark art. The old elf was reluctant at first. However, after Aethas demonstrated a bit of his newfound power, he was more than happy to give up those knowledges for his cute disciple, which ranges from spells from mages, advanced enchanting and disenchanting, and the juiciest of them all, warlock spells on demon summoning. The old man might be a warlock whom specialized in the way of destruction during his prime, but it doesn't mean that he didn't know anything about other specializations, which range from the curses of affliction to the conjuring of powerful demonic entities, and Aethas was more interested on the latter part. During those months, he had completely mastered all the knowledge the old warlock had to offer. The only option he had left now is either wait for the portal to the Laran to be stabilized or seek an adventure of his own, since based on his teacher's description of the new Azeroth power scale, Aethas could be considered to be a full-fledged sorcerer with the apprentice badge to show for proof, unlike the game, which is based on the level of the player to determine power. In this new world, an individual power level is determined by the power they have proved and what they earn, such as the apprentice badge. In the world, there are novice, apprentice, journeyman, expert and master above that are the realm beyond any mortal could achieve. Only under strict conditions can they possibly be met, a paragon or a champion. To put it into easier terms to understand, Aethas estimate that if these titles and ranks, paragon or champion would be on the same level as the leader of a race or faction back in the game. Unfortunately, his teacher does not know what is above that realm, as he is only a master warlock before his retirement. Fortunately, unlike the game which were just a simulation, this is reality. Thus of course there is a chance and possibility that even a novice could find a way to take down someone who is at the master level. It might be low but it still exists, and knowing that his own power is above that of many people in this world does give him a sense of accomplishment. However, if his teacher had a better estimation, Aethas' ranking is in no way below that of the journeyman realm, quite possibly an expert, with just the ridiculous amount of mana he had inside of himself. The only limitation he had is experiences and the way he utilized his spell. Chapter 16, Chapter 1, The Compilation Graduation Final Creation. It had been a couple of months since the little run-in incident that occurred in the Sanctum of the Moon, and all of Aethas' injuries had been but all healed without leaving as much as a scar on his beautiful soft skin. 10. All of these results can be thanks to the advanced alchemical potion and healing magic from the priest and hired alchemist. Money could be hired, and one thing that their family doesn't lack is coins, all thanks to his mother booming businesses since they moved to these lands. As for other breaking news, more like a big disappointment, Aethas got a notice from Professor Sunreach stating that there will not be any chance of going to the Laran within the foreseeable future, the reason being of a sudden, demonic invasion. Hearing such news, Aethas wasn't too surprised, knowing such thing would happen sooner or later, but with the beginning of the demonic invasion of the Quel'Dana Isle, it marked the twilight hours of the Burning Crusade expansion of World of Warcraft, which created opportunity to his delight, such as drawing away the royal capital attention from the less populated regions such as the Ghostlands. And of course the Arcane Sanctum he commissioned has been completed, and with the keystone inserted, Aethas can dare to guarantee that no elves under his family jurisdiction shall be in hunger for magic within the next few thousand years, as the ley lines themselves contain a close to limitless amount of magic. Of course, within that year, all residents of Tranquillion had already accepted his family as the land, de facto, ruler, outside of the royal family of Sunstriders. As a matter of fact, many people of the Ghostlands shared no love for the Thalassian royal family after the Scourge invasion due to their lack of support. Master, your order has arrived. It is from Professor Sunreach. The butler addressed Aethas respectfully. The so-called order was nothing more than reagents his teacher procured for him for his graduation gift. Bring it in, and please, vacate my dwelling until further notice. My experimentation might be quite hazardous. Aethas kindly warned his servant. Indeed, what he's about to do is beyond just hazardous now. The word hazardous grossly underestimates the destructive value of what Aethas can really actually do. Understood. Master, please be careful and not hurt yourself, else the lord and lady will skin me alive. The butler broke out in cold sweat thinking about Aethas' parents. After the butler left, the guard took great efforts and finally managed to brought in his reagents, which is actually a large wooden chest. Aethas swore that the guards almost passed out from pure exhaustion afterward. However, with a bit of money rewards, they smiled happily and went off on their usual business. After verifying that all inhabitants of his dwelling finally left, Aethas went ahead and opened up the chest. What inside was a neatly stacked pile of exotic ingredients, the best money could buy. But what actually caught his eyes was a small, healthy, tree branch on the side. His eyes almost popped open after looking at it. There is no way he actually managed to procure it. The so-called healthy branch is actually a sapling of Teldrassil, the world tree Teldrassil that housed the Night Elven civilization. The life power contained within the branch is terrifying to say the least. A single branch held enough life force to bring back an entire forest to life. Luckily there is a powerful enchantment on the chest that masked and sealed off the aura of its content, else it would be a complete disaster as having a pack of crazy mages trying to rob the caravan. Alright, let's get started. Aethas began to prepare his summoning spell. More specifically, it's the Impritzklop. Aethas could really use his expertise on the matter of demonic weapons creation as of now. If the Night Elves were to know what he's about to do, he would definitely be the enemy of their entire race, and possibly all druids. I'm back. You missed me, master. Seeing Ritzklop popping out from the magic circle, Aethas wasn't much surprised anymore. Let's get to business. I have brought the required reagents here. I need your knowledge on artifact creation of demonic origin. Aethas looked down on the imp, who rubbed his greedy hands as he peered into his cache. Master, what made you think I have what you need? I'm just an imp, the lowliest of creatures within the Burning Legions. Ritzklop faked his tear. Aethas suddenly had an urge to pummel his minion to dust. This little bastard is practically asking him to bribe it. Alright, I see where this is going now. How about mana crystals? I'm sure you love those, don't you? Aethas grinned as he pulled out a small crystal containing traces of magic and waved it in front of the imp. Yes. Ritzklop has the knowledge you need. The eyes of the imp glowed as he snatched the crystal from his Aethas' hand and began licking it. Gross. Alright, then show me. Aethas crossed his arm while glaring at the little imp. One can never show any weakness in attitude toward their demonic servant. Behold my master. This is what you should be looking for. The imp waved his finger and immediately a large metallic chest popped into existence. The aura contained within the chest was horrifying to say the least. The imp just kicked it open and began digging from within. Before long he pulled out a roll of skin paper and showed it to Aethas. What showed before his eyes was a magical staff blueprint of demonic in origin. This, my master, is a one-of-a-kind standardized Legion battle mage's staff, guaranteed to get the job such as making the world burn or summoning in Legion of Demons. Ritzklop bragged. For some odd reason, this staff looked way too familiar in his opinion. Hey Ritzklop, tell me something. Is this a rip-off version of the legendary Jeweled Scepter of Sardras? Athas asked the imp while pondering. Huh. You know of the legendary artifact, the imp shrieked. Of course, who the hell do you think I am? My teacher was formerly a master warlock specialized in the path of destruction. Athas sneered. Ha ha ha. This is great. Then you should know the full extent of that artifact then, let not skip any more time, as you might have guessed master, this is indeed an incomplete prototype of the scepter, might not be as powerful, but to deal with the garbage this tiny world has to offer, I'm sure you would like it, for now at least, the imp grinned viciously. Alright, I'll take this one, you may return now. You shall be summoned once more when you are needed. I cast Banish and immediately Ritzclop exploded and returned to the twisting nether. Now as for you. Athas held up the blueprint and began memorizing it. The drawing showed what could be the final result, however of course one could imitate the design, however there won't be much power inside it. What really important is the magical circuits inlaying and design of the staff itself. 1. It is time to prepare for my graduation. He rolled up the blueprint after memorizing it and tossed it inside of his magically enchanted bottomless bag before breaking out the reagents for his new weapon of mass destruction. Chapter 17, Chapter 2, Apprentice the Cleansing. Athas locked himself inside his room for days, carefully laying down the intricate details of his vision for a perfect magical staff. He has the best possible materials that could make any mages turn green out of envy. All he needs to do is take his time on this one matter. 1. Follow what the blueprint stated. After spending a week fixing up what needed, the first stage of his magical staff is complete, made from the branch of the world tree and other exotic materials to not only include part of a pit lord, forged using the flame of the twisting nether, and inscribed with demon magic, all crafted under the hand of an apprentice mage. After adding in the finishing touch, which was the core of the mana elemental from the sanctum of the moon as the focusing iris for the staff, everything is completed. The moment Athas finished gluing in the jewel onto the staff, the weapon immediately radiated an intense amount of fiery fail magical aura that could make any mortal uncomfortable just being near it. You definitely need a name. You were forged by my hand to be my one and only weapon, to serve my purpose of destroying my enemies and protecting my family, an irony for what I used to create you, your name shall be. Athas grasped tightly onto the body of the staff and held it up gently. Fiendfellow, the final flame, a fitting name for a weapon that Athas will use to set his enemies and possibly this world and countless others in a sea of infernal. Asterisk dung asterisk dung asterisk dung dash asterisk dung asterisk dung asterisk dung. A set of 3 tower bells sounded from the town square. After the rebuilding of Tranquillion, Athas proposed that the town build a large bell tower in the center of town to use for signaling and communication with the town residents and garrisons in time of crisis, never in his mind that he thought it would be used this early. The 3 bells signal in the interval of to mean that they're under attack. What baffled Athas was, who had the balls to actually attack a town that was protected by a magical barrier and a small standing army? What the hell is going on? Who's attacking us? Athas went out and grabbed one of the nearby guards and questioned him. Sir. It's the Scourge. The patrol team spotted a raiding party heading our direction. After informing Athas, he quickly ran off and joined the rank of the town guards, ready to defend the settlement with their very life if need be. Scourge. They really begged for attention now of all time? Athas wasn't planning on messing with the Lich King army just yet, he was planning on annihilating Zul'jin and his little army of menacing pests that one called the Amani Trolls. Zul'jin from the Warcraft history was a warlord and chieftain of the Amani Forest Troll tribe in the Eastern Kingdom. During the Second War and the reopening of the Dark Portal, he allied with the Horde against the human kingdoms and the High Elves. However, unfortunately for him, he got his ass kicked and captured, but soon escaped and rebuilding his army to attack the remnant of the High Elves, now known as the Blood Elves, but unexpectedly they allied themselves with the Horde which cornered the once proud but idiotic warlord of the Forest Trolls. The history of his people and the Troll dated back for thousands of years, approximately 2,800 years prior when the High Elves migrated north from Tirisfal Glade to what now known as Quel'Thalas and built their magnificent city on top of the sacred ground of the Amani Empire. For thousands of years, they have fought countless skirmishes, so much blood has shed now that it is impossible to reconcile with the Forest Troll. One of them must be destroyed for there to be peace, or some form of semblance for peace. Athas could only let out a long sigh. Race war is a bitch, he thought it, but what can he do about it? Azeroth and possibly countless other worlds have been plagued by such wars for centuries, millennia. It's part of their culture by now. As long as there is hatred, there will be war, but that is for another story. For now, destroying the invading Scourge is his first priority. Athas glared at the gloomy horizon as he clenched onto Fiendfellow. The Scourge shall be cleansed from Ghostlands once and for all, Athas declared with conviction. They shall be his first test subject against the power of the soon-to-be mighty artifact. Standing on top of a building, Athas glared dagger at the incoming swarm of undead scourges, consisting of mainly skeletal soldiers and occasionally some zombies and ghouls, nothing too major in his opinions. The only problem was the numbers. There must be at least 100 or 2 of them shambling toward Tranquillion. Farstrider. Ready your arrow? Athas' father, Theramir commanded the Farstrider archers as he drew his great blade, waiting for the shambling horde of undead to draw closer. By then the town guards had long been mobilized and formed a tight rank with sword and shield in hand, forming a wall blocking the undead. Release the arrows. Theramir roared and a hailstorm of arrows with mini-explosive marble modifications soon unleashed upon the swarm of rotting corpses. As the arrow landed on their body, it immediately exploded and sent bits and pieces everywhere on the field. The volley devastated the swarm, reducing their number by nearly half. Men's. March. Theramir finished it off by commanding his troop to march forward in a tight rank formation of shield wall. When the two sides collided, it was a one-side massacre. The undead cannot even scratch upon the invincible shield walls of well-trained and disciplined guardsmen. This is too easy. Am I just being overly too paranoid? Athas thought. It was then that something broke this train of thought. A hook attached to an iron chain shot toward the formation and made a hole in it. I fucking knew it. Athas facepalmed. There's always a big guy in every mess that he's involved in. The last one was a giant arcane elemental and an angry pit lord. Now it was a big flesh monster that was known as an abomination, dubbed by his forsaken ally. Quickly. Fill in the rank. The formation cannot be broken. Theramar commanded as he heroically leaped toward the monster with the blade over his head. Dad, seriously, you are an elf. Not an ORC. Why do you have to be such a brute? Show some finesse, will you? Athas cursed loudly. It has been a year since they moved to the Ghostland, and his father never once came home without some form of injuries on his body after going for some patrol mission. All of that come from the fact that he always jumped headfirst into the carnage without a care for his very life. Seeing Theramar come flying toward its face, the abomination just made a light sweep using its giant meaty hand, practically swatting away a fly, sending Theramar crashing onto the nearby wall. See. Athas sighed before raising Fiendfellow high in the air and began gathering mana from the air itself, which was saturated with an insane amount of mana thanks to the arcane sanctum. Final Flame, he shouted the name of the spell. No, it wasn't a spell. This is a special ability that came with the creation of the demonic artifact, imbued with the essence of a pit lord. The image of a ragging pit lord had materialized around the jewel with its mouth wide open full of fail fire. All hell was unleashed onto the field. The abomination doesn't even realize what just happened and were quickly consumed by the failed demonic fire, searing both its body and soul, reducing it to nothing but ashes, along with countless other undead creatures. This scene caused shock among the troops and Theramar himself as he looked toward the direction of the spell. The one who casted it was nothing but a young teenager barely the age of 15. It was indeed his son. Chapter 18, Chapter 3, Graduation, Funeral Fire. After the little invasion of undead scourge, all the authorities of Tranquillion decide to have an emergency meeting to discuss their future course of action. The atmosphere was tense with Athas' father, Theramar, sitting at the end of the long table with his arms crossed and eyes closed. I propose that we need to take more initiative in cleansing the ghostlands of the undead scourge. Does anyone here have any ideas on the most efficient method we could take? Theramar questioned. The room was in silence. Many of the people sitting here are nothing but civil servants who manage the internal affairs of the town itself, thus they did not have much knowledge in the art of warfare, other than the group of Farstrider that served under Theramar himself. Captain, I propose that we increase the number of patrols in the field, hitting all the spawn points of these wild servants of the Lich King, a ranger proposed. Honestly, it wasn't a bad idea. However, doing so would increase the strain upon their overall forces, which could leave certain areas a lot more vulnerable. They only have so many field troops for such causes as they could not deploy the town garrisons for the fact the guards aren't really trained for these types of deployment. Captain, pardon for my interruption. One of the civil servants spoke up, interrupting the war council on the sideline between Theramar and his subordinates. Yes? If you have an idea, please speak up. As of right now, any ideas is better than absolutely nothing. Theramar encouraged him. Ah yes. Thank you. I propose that we should put in some orders for the mechanized arcane sentries from the Silvermoon army to be stationed here, in Tranquillion. That way we can use them to defend the town instead of relying on precious manpower which can be relocated elsewhere for better uses. The elf proposed a marvelous idea indeed. The mechanized sentries of Silvermoon are renowned for their defensive capability as an acting guardian. However, in the end, it was only a good idea. There is but a few problems, the first being a single unit alone can cost the town literally an arm or a leg in terms of cost and maintenances, the second being it close to impossible for Silvermoon to station such unit in the frontier of the kingdom where attacks are happening weekly if not daily. In the end, this is just going to be another headache. Athas couldn't help but chuckle from the side of the war council. As one of the greatest firepower and contributors of the town's prosperity, Athas obviously has a seat in such a meeting, despite his young age or his relationship to the leading figure of the town, his father. In the end, Theramar just decides on increasing the patrolling rate of the Farstriders. It really is unrealistic to get themselves a mechanized sentry from Silvermoon without the right people and tools to maintain them. As for Athas, he had other plans. It's another one of those crazy one that almost got him and Valira once, but this time it is different. Athas will be a lot more prepared. Athas, you're not planning to do something like that again, right? Valira popped out from the shadow, surprising him with her skill in stealth. Definitely not. When did you come back? Definitely am. Only he knows how to end the scourge operation here in the Ghostlands once and for all, that is to take out the leader himself, that is Darkhan the thief, the traitor himself. That one undead elf ran the entire operation of the scourge here in the frontier of Quel'Thalas in his comfy home of Deathholmes. Darkhan the thief, once a noble of the kingdom of Quel'Thalas, betrayed the high elves by letting the scourge invade their kingdom, practically burning down half of it while tainting the sunwell that caused the formerly high elves into such predicament as today with magic withdrawal. If anything, he is a piece of shit that needed to be burned, pulverized and possibly have his soul erased from this plane of existence and sent directly to the Shadowland, but sadly heroes have already done the first two parts, but the Darkhan the thief just won't rest in peace. Athas came to the theory that somehow during the resurrection of Kel'Thuzad, Darkhan had somehow involved himself into that process and became a lich, or in this case a demi-lich, which could somehow explain his revival after having his body completely destroyed by flame. I just came back today after joining the training camp. She said to Athas, though, he couldn't help but shiver. What kind of boot camp training would actually make their recruit train for almost a year and change their temperament by this degree? I know that look you have on your face, whatever it is, I am coming along with you to make sure no more harm shall come to you. Valira said with eyes blazed in determination, causing Athas to be helpless. 3. Alright, but with us two alone it might be a bit difficult, he added. Darkhan the thief fight isn't a joke. Without strength and cunning he wouldn't be the leader of the scourge in Ghostlands, nor have the same standing as the legendary figures such as Lord Timur and once compete for the position of Grand Magister of Quel'Thalas. He is a powerful mage necromancer proficient in commanding the Lich King forces, thus the recommendation is either a hit squad of powerful heroes, including himself and Valira, or an army capable of breaching Deathholmes. Luckily for Athas, being a warlock has its perks, especially when one had Fiendfellow on hand, but of course that would lead to more endless headache, dealing with a group of demons and harder than just a single one, unless it's either a pit lord or a dreadlord that we are talking about. Another issue is drawing the attention from unwanted eyes of the burning legions. The last thing he needs is to have a powerful demon commander or general diverting their sight from Quel'Thanas to his tiny abode here in the Ghostlands. Who are you planning to bring for this little operation of yours? Who are we going to destroy? Valera questioned him. This girl, did you really do all of this without even knowing who we are up against? Oh right, he didn't tell her yet. Does the name Darkhandrathi ring any bell? I whispered in her ear. This caused her eyes to open wide in shock. She finally had a clue on what Athas was planning to do. You don't mean? She stared back at him. Yes, I mean that one. Athas assured her, this is going to be indeed a very long day. Later on in a quiet, family-friendly environment that is Athas' own workshop, where only three figures are presences at that moment, it was Athas, Valera and lastly everyone's favorite little Askissa Ritzklop the imp. My great supreme master. Your plan is crazy. Especially that from a mortal. You cannot possibly, even Ritzklop, a demon, thought that Athas' ideas were full of insanity. But can you do it? Athas asked the little imp once again. Yes, but I cannot promise anything else other than that. I do hope you have a backup plan in case it backfires. Ritzklop cannot help but to remember their last major incident of when something actually went out of control. 1. But in the end the little imp still get paid for running errand for his little master. Honestly the little thought that such a life with this master wasn't so bad after all. It would be very shitty if something were to happen to Athas, thus he will try his best to help Athas as to keep the profit going into his pocket. Screw the burning legions, his loyalty now lied with the little elf. The legions doesn't give him a good life, this master here does. For a moment there, Athas thought that the little imp was a reincarnation of a goblin instead of an actual demon, greedy little bastard, to actually demand 2 tons of crystallized mana, which is worth about 2 weeks of accumulation from the arcane sanctum. Time to carry on the next step of the plan. I hope you have all you needed, Valera. This is going to be a long, and guaranteed to be a very dangerous operation. Saying that the girl only silently nodded. All of her training to this point is for this one purpose only, is to be useful and protect Athas. Valera sworn to never let such an incident happen again like in the Moon Sanctum. Chapter 19, Chapter 4, Deathholm's Show Me Result. Standing in the field of death before the necropolis that is Deathholm's, Athas and Valera were a shrouded cloak enchanted with the stealth ability. You see that? Athas pointed at a single tower in the center of the necropolis that was visible from their position. Valera silently nodded as she turned her gaze toward that same tower. Our target, Darkhandrathi, resides on top of that tower, he added. The tower itself was quite eye-catching and badly designed to say the least. If this city of the dead were to be under siege, a single good shot from an elven glaive thrower or a horde demolisher can very well collapse it into nothing but a pile of dust. However, their target, the commander of the Scourge, would be long gone by then. Athas had an urge to unleash a mighty chaos bolt infused with the power of Fiendfellow for that same purpose. However, it would be too eye-catching, and if he were to fail, the Scourge army behind that wall would be the death of them. As powerful as he is right now combined with the staff Fiendfellow, there is only so much he can do. The Scourge can just use the wave tactic to drown him out. Alright, let's head inside. Stay within touch range from me, else you will be discovered and we have to abandon this operation. Athas told Valera as he grabbed her hand with one of his own, while activating a concealing enchantment item he personally crafted just for this purpose. The item ability was to completely erase their presences, making it undetectable and mask their life aura with that of death, making them completely invisible to the Scourge radar. They made their way across the horrors that lay within the Scourge city. Calling this place a city is nothing more than an insult to civilization itself. Everywhere is filled with death and despair. Bloody iron cages that once held the living captive, ghouls and banshee roamed the street alongside other monstrosities such as crypt fiends and abominations. I swear, after I'm done with Darkhan, I will purge this entire region in the flame of hell itself. Athas silently cursed. The way the Scourge do things pissed him off. No wait, the mindless Scourge are technically innocent in a sense as they only followed the orders of their superior. Which in this situation mean Darkhandrathi himself, whom then followed the orders of his superiors. The chain of commands just continued until it reached its final destination, the Lich King himself. In this case it's likely to be Arthas Menethil after he merged with Ner'zhul. This is much easier than they had initially expected. The Scourge were oblivious of the two presents. It wasn't long before they reached the tower in the center of the necropolis, guarded by 2 hulking meat sacks guarding a closed double door. Damn, this might be a problem. We either have to kill these two or look for an alternative route. Athas frowned. Trying to kill these two might pose some problems, the first being attracting the attention of all the undeads within the city, the second being abominations are a pain in the ass to destroy as they are created to sulk up damages. Athas, up there. Valera whispers into his ear while pointing upward. From there he could see that the windows are actually opened. Hold on, who in their right mind would build something like this in a war fortress? Oh wait, yeah, it's the Scourge. Held on to me tightly. Valera wrapped one of her slender arms around his waist. Suddenly Athas felt a dreadful feeling rising up from within. She suddenly crouched and made a great leap upward, launching the both of them high into the air, halfway toward their destination before the girl tossed out a long grappling hook that latched itself onto the roof of the tower. From there she pulled the both of them upward. Athas was completely speechless. What kind of Spartan training did she go through to gain such immense strength? It is completely illogical. Such a small frame cannot possibly hold such power within them. If there's such a technique, Athas would definitely want to learn them, but on a second thought, instead of gaining such strength through Spartan-style physical training, he could just try to enhance his muscle with magic, since all he had on himself is literally an endless source of mana, all thanks to the arcane elemental, the mana sanctum and the endless amount of soul fragments he broke down throughout the years. what surprised him was the fact that there is no side effect whatsoever for eating the fragments, although the dark evil feeling he had after eating a fragments is there, but it doesn't seem to do any harm to him, thus it wasn't much of a worry for now, that is, which then reminded him about the little Book of the Dead thing he always had on himself. He had long finished everything within, and instead of discarding it into oblivion through the fell flame, he kept it. For some odd reasons, he felt that there is something incomplete about this book. Perhaps this is only one volume out of many that existed out there. When we arrived inside the tower, what greeted them was an undead elf, sitting in a chair made from the bone of humanoid creatures. Darkhan Drathir. Aetha's eyes narrowed as they shone a brilliant purple hue to them. Oh bravo, you finally made it. You actually surprised me. I had underestimated your foolishness to actually show up here, alone, to face me. Darkhan smirked in sheer contempt, looking at the two of them. Valira growled as she unsheathed her dagger soaked in holy water blessed by a priest ready for an attack. She planned to take Darkhan head off in one swift movement. Put a leash on your bitch, would you? Darkhan insulted Valira. Since the beginning he never did put the Spartan girl in his eyes, he mainly focused on Aethas. It seems like you were expecting us, traitors. Aethas' tone was that of mocking. Darkhan Drathir, formerly a nobleman with a very high position in the kingdom of Quel'Thalas, however he betrayed his kingdom and people to Earthas, and doomed them by destroying the Sunwell. Ha ha ha. Traitor. You know nothing, boy. It was them who betrayed me. The position of Grand Magister should have been mine. But no, unlike them, my master promised me something even better, immortality, unrivaled power, and much, much more. He showed me his rotten teeth with a grin. But on another point, you are right, indeed I have been expecting you. Your very soul cried out to me like a moth to flame. It seems like you had it too, don't you? He pointed to Aethas' little knapsack, more specifically, the content from within. Take it out, the Book of the Dead, I know you have it on you. I cannot believe the Lord would choose such a weakling as a candidate. Darkhan facepalmed himself while glaring at Aethas venomously. What in the living hell are you talking about? What candidate? Aethas raised an eyebrow while looking at Darkhan dead rotten eyes. Candidate? For what? Is this some kind of trial? And Lord? Is he talking about the Lich King? Or the author Kil'Thuzad himself? Please don't tell me that you are completely oblivious to the priceless artifact you had on you. Dear oh my, it is such a sin. The fool joined the trial of death without even knowing. That book represents the right to be the direct disciple of the Archlich himself and possibly his future successor. But no matter, you'll be dead before you even have the chance to complete the trial. Darkhan grinned viciously as he initiated combat by summoning a mass of undeads around the two. Behold, the power granted to me by the Lich King, the very floor itself has risen against the two. So that's why the undead scourge used the bones and remains of their enemies to build their fortresses. Very useful indeed. Aethas cannot help but weirdly admire the genius of such ideas. Then please, allow me to return your favor in kind. Aethas pulled out his Fiendfellow and gave it a light wave, which imbued a massive amount of mana toward one single spell that is an inborn ability of the staff, summoning of which he renamed March of Oblivion. A large black portal soon ripped a tear in space. From within, countless burning eyes and green flames stare back, followed by a blood-curdling sound. Asterisk how will. You little piece of shit, you brought reinforcement. Darkhan cursed loudly. Of course. Who in their right mind would want to assault a fortress of the dead with just two people? What a moron. Of course Aethas brought along surprise reinforcement. Never in a million years would Darkhan expect a grand summoning of a demonic legion surging at him. I love being a warlock, Aethas yelled as more portals continued to appear and thus the chaos ensued. Chapter 20, Chapter 5, Let It Burn. 2. I love being a warlock. Aethas screamed from the top of his lungs as portals continued to pop into reality, unleashing packs of demons at his enemies. 1. The massive tower floor which was formerly quiet and deathly silence now ensued in chaos as demons and undeads tried to destroy one another. Master, Ritzklop has completed his task, your mercenaries have arrived on time. The little imp swiftly made his way toward Aethas while screaming among the chaos. Good job, I'm sure you already informed them of what their temporary duty is, I hope. Aethas smirked at the little imp. All of those mana crystals were not wasted if they can complete this one and simple task. Yes master, to sow chaos within this very fortress until they are either destroyed or they are forcefully banished back to the twisting nether. The imp bowed gracefully at his deed. Tell them to keep the lesser minions of the scourge attention, draw them all away from this very location. I have a bone to pick with Darkhan myself. He then turned to Valira. I'm sure you do too, he smirked as the girl let out her bloodlust ready her swords and disappeared from that very spot. From the look of it, it seems to be an advanced form of the stealth skill, Vanish, from the game. This is one of the most useful abilities a rogue can have in terms of just pure escape and surprise attack, no doubt Valira going to use it for the latter. Fireball. Without further ado, Aethas tossed a fireball, the size of an apple at Darkhan with his finger, to which the now undead elf sneered. Such weak magic. I can barely feel any mana in it and yet you want to harm me. Asterisk bang. Darkhan intended to slap the fireball out of existence with his palm, only to be surprised by a fierce explosion that engulfed him soon after. 1. Huh. Got you, that wasn't just any fireball that any fire mages can cast. To expect Athas to cast such a weak spell with his talent in magic and enchanting is just a massive insult. The exploding fireball magic was a result from his earlier experiment on enchanting. Instead of just enchanting items and imbuing them with special effect, he's wondering if it is possible to instead grant special ability to items. He could instead try to give it to spells itself. 1. So after countless trial and errors of magic going haywire on him, Athas finally somewhat mastered the ability to cast special enchantment on magic itself, granting them abilities such as explosive, piercing, or empowerment at the cost of increasing the difficulty and mana expenses, something he doubted that he lacked. This ability to enchant spells come in the form of a magic rune tattooed on himself. A lot can happen within a couple of months of locking yourself inside your own laboratory. He named this special ability that he came up with Metamagic. However, those from the game would instantly know these abilities as rank 2 of the base ability. Athas just took it to another level, that is all. He had all 3 of these special enchantments applied on himself. If any other mages were to try to do this, they would get mana burn after just casting a few weak spells from their book. You like my surprise? Athas mocked Darkhan, now looked all tattered instead of his formerly noble self, the pristine ebony robe covered in burn marks, but surprisingly, those were just surface injuries that wouldn't be bothered by the undead however. That was unexpected. Was that your strongest spell? To surprise me with a weak spell that morphed into a fiery infernal, the wound of Darkhan began to regenerate at a rapid pace. Athas was wondering how the hell it was possible for an undead to heal in the first place, but he found his answer from the back of his head that Darkhan might have been turned into a lich, or a weaker version of one since he's not a floating arrogant skeleton. Albeit he is already arrogant and egoistic to the point that Athas himself had to blush. Strongest spell? Please. That was nothing. A cantrip fireball that any apprentice mages can cast can be called a secret trump card? Hey? Why don't you test me? With a snap of his finger, what happened next shocked Darkhan to his very soul. Countless weak fireballs materialized and danced around Athas in unison. Seeing such explosive horrors danced at his enemy fingertip, Darkhan quickly dropped his usual arrogant and went on full defensive, using both of his hands to cast an anti-magic shell, hopefully to negate the damage, only to him out that a sharp blade had pierced his undead heart and burning his very body and soul. Gah! Why you bitch? Darkhan swung his staff, however all he hit was empty smoke. Valeera has long vanished from the scene. Eat this. Athas grinned and soon, a barrage of fireballs were pounding on the Scourge Supreme Leader of the Ghostlands branch. Not even his bones will be there after the dust settles, but of course Athas didn't let him off that easily. To prevent a lich from ever coming back to unlife once again, or this case a demi-lich, one must attack its soul directly and destroy it. Chaos Bolt, a roaring blast of fail and flame soared toward the location of Darkhan. Outside of the tower, Deathholmes. A roaring explosion caused the entire upper floor of the tower to be practically blown off, sending undeads and demons alike flying out from the 10 stories building onto the cold hard ground below. Of course Athas casted a large protective field of magic around his location to shield himself and Valeera from the hell that was unleashed. Now that's what I call destruction. Even without using Fiend Fellow, Athas was amazed with the total destruction he managed to cause. Imagine what he can do with the staff power imbued. Now he felt really drained afterward. That is the most surprising part. Athas hasn't had this feeling for a very long time already. The mayhem caused Valeera to doubt herself as well. Is there a point in any of the hellish training she went through? Arg! Why you little runt, my oh my. Darkhan resilience and tenacity shocked Athas to the core. He tossed everything at the former magister and yet the damn creature is still alive. At this point, Darkhan gave up on dueling Athas in magic, since he now knows that it is impossible to beat the brat in his own field of mastery, and thus he dropped his staff and summoned a thin sword made of sharp bone. Athas raised an eyebrow at Darkhan action. This sure in hell wasn't canon, he thought if, since when did Darkhan ever go melee against his opponent with a sword? Certainly not in the game. 1. However, unfortunately for Athas, melee was never his forte, no matter how much Theramir wanted to drill the art of sword and melee combat into him. Athas, allow me, I want to show you my training result, my resolve to do whatever it takes to defend you. Valeera jumped in front of Athas with the 2 blades crossed. Foolish child, do you think you can defeat me? The great Darkhan Drathir in the art of sword fighting. The little brat might have beaten me in magic. However, in my prime I was a former dueling master. A true noble. Here we go again, more of the evil villain rambling. What Darkhan wasn't expecting was for Valeera to suddenly appear right before him and the blade of her curved elven-forged sword sliced and created a thin line across his neck. You talk too much for a dead man. She growled. 2. If Darkhan could break out in cold sweat, he would be dripping wet by then, and if he were to be his former alive self, he would be long dead as the blade actually sliced through into his throat. After falling back a few feet, Darkhan casted a minor mending spell around his throat and repaired it, allowing him to speak once again. What a pair of monsters! Darkhan thought to himself, a powerful mage and assassin duo, what a deadly combination. The blade was so quick that Darkhan wasn't even able to feel any pain from the holy water-soaked blade. It just showed how much skill Valeera put in to hone her blade, to make a dead man feel no pain from the burn to his soul with her blade. Heads up. Athas mocked Darkhan from the sideline, finally brought the undead elf attention back to the fight, to only notice Valeera has long disappeared. Explanation. Metamagic, the ability to enchant magic itself and increase the ranks and power of an ability or spell. Some come with a cost, while others don't. The best example of metamagic from the game world is class's second rank skill. It has shown its appearances in either form of a type of marking or tattoo, demon hunters, or in some cases, rune words imprinted on the body of mages. Chapter 21, Chapter 6, Death Ending, Underwhelming Death. Valeera danced with her dual blades. With every movement she made an injury on the flesh of the traitor Darkhan Drathir, forcing him into a corner. Even with his immortality as an undead and that of a lich, being seared by holy water isn't a pleasant experience to say the least. It wasn't long before Athas finally regained a bit of his mana after spamming on fireballs and a chaos bolt, all boosted to the teeth with metamagic. Here's another surprise for you, Drathir. Even though the magic he regained is not enough to cast any powerful damaging spell, however it doesn't prevent Athas from putting in a few buffs effect on Valeera, granting her even greater power, a condition known as oversaturate, or so it is what he named it. The moment Athas' magic hit Valeera, she suddenly felt an unimaginable surge of power from within her, boosting her fighting potential by at least another 20%. The power completely removed her muscle fatigue. What is wrong with you? Darkhan Drathir could not help but to exclaim loudly in utter shock. Never in his unlife could he imagine encountering such a ridiculous scenario. He regretted underestimating one of the candidates who carried the will of death. This forced him into a tough decision. He has to use his secret trump card. Enough! A wave of shadow exploded from Darkhan Drathir and knocked Valeera back by a couple of meters, temporarily stunning her and Athas within the vicinity. I had enough of this little shenanigan. I will show you what it means to hold the power of an apostle of death. Darkhan Drathir then pulled out a crystal vial tied as a pendant around his rotten neck, the vial held within a dark viscous liquid with moving faces. Behold! The water of the sunwell, corrupted by the shadow of death. He then uncorked the vial and proceeded to just chucked it down in one gulp. The two watched in pure speechlessness as the undead elf drank the corrupted water of the sunwell like it was Metricton.dew soda. Asterisk bang. Before the both of them could comprehend anything, there was a loud bang. Blood, guts and bone pieces were flying everywhere. When they finally noticed what all of that was about, they finally understood the situation. The great Darkhan Drathir, once an elf who could compete for the position of Grand Magister of Silver Moon, turned traitor and swore his allegiance to the Lich King and slaughtered 90% of the High Elven population before turning into a demi-lich and commanded the Scourge to wrought havoc onto the region of Ghostlands, and the dead scars perished on this day. The cause of death? Suicide? More along the line of unforeseen drug abuse disasters. 1. Both of them were flabbergasted at their situation. Valeera was expecting a tough fight after seeing Darkhan chug that vial. As for Athas, he was entreated by the prospect of the tainted sunwell water to notice anything else. But in the end, Darkhan Drathir's cause of them still left them speechless. What an idiot. I can't believe someone like that, once becoming close to obtaining the position of Grand Magister, he should have known how much power the water of the sunwell actually contained, even if it was just a small vial and were tainted with the power of death. Athas shook his head in disappointment. To set an example of the power of the sunwell, which were created using the water of the Well of Eternity itself, the same one that almost summoned in Sajras and the Burning Legion, the one that fueled the magical need of the Highborn, once was the greatest magical empire this world has ever seen and also shattered the world itself. Just a small vial is enough to then create the sunwell, which in turn fueled the High Elven civilization. To just casually drink it as if it was nothing is just pure idiocy. Even if that was 1 in a millionth of the original power of the well, it isn't something a mortal body could handle. Unless you are a powerful mage on the same level as the highborn Queen Adshara or the current ruler of Quel'Thalas, Kael'thas Sunstrider, of course. Rest in pieces, you dumb fool. May you suffer less in the realm of the Shadowland. Athas murmurs a silent prayer to a once ambitious fool before turning to the little imp minion of his who is currently hiding behind a piece of broken wall. Ritzglop, call back the demon mercenary. Their job is finished, he commanded in a stern voice. Master, unfortunately I think we ran into a little bit of a problem. The imp starts to fiddle around with his fingers. Their leader, Hextraxis, refused to listen to their employer's command and continued to remain here. He continued. Dealing with demons is such a pain in the neck, Athas thought, thinking of how to punish these bastards for causing such a headache for himself. It is not a problem that they are causing problems for the Scourge. However, after causing damage to Deathholmes, they might decide to move further out and attack mortal settlements. That is the true problem with untamed and mercenary demons. Just take me to this Hextraxis or whatever the hell his name is. I'll reason with this fool. Athas grunted in irritation as he reached his hand into the bottomless bag and pulled out a scroll. Seeing his master in such a foul mood, the little imp obeyed and quickly led his master to the great demon Hextraxis, which happened to be a being called the Nathrajim, or in mortal tongue, the Dread Lord. It wasn't long before they arrived at the gathering location of a large group of demons, surrounding a being with purple skin, horns and large leathery wings, a dreadlord. Listen to me, minions. After we wipe out these disgusting rotten insect, we shall conquer this world in the name of our great lord. Wilganese. We shall eradicate all of these mortal insects and purge this world, he continued to shout. Eradicate? Insect? You are Hextraxis, I presume, from afar Athas shouted at the dreadlord, catching his attention and irritation. It is Lord Hextraxis to you, mortal, he growled. Yeah, whatever, are you done? Because if you are, fuck off. Athas' eyes flashed in a light of fury as he glared at the demon. You dare to say such a thing to me, mortal? Do you have any clue of who I am? I am the servant of the great Doom Lord Wilganese. One of the great lords of the Burning Legion, he continued to ramble on. Goodbye. Athas directly tore the scroll within his hand, and immediately all the demons within the radius of 100 meters were frozen in place. Good thing I had asked the teacher to inscribe a scroll of mass banishment, just for something like this. The now shredded scroll lit up in a green flame and the ashes scattered in the wind, and instantly, all the demons within the area were warped into a dark portal beneath their very feet, presumably back to the twisting nether where they hailed from. I definitely should learn inscription next, these things are very useful. Athas couldn't help but to admire his teacher's skills, imagining what he could do with this kind of profession once he mastered it like he did to enchanting. Okay Valira, let's return, I'm sure my parents are worried about us sneaking out like this, he cited as he looked at the now once again muted girl now holding a small vial in her hand and gently placed on his own. From the look of it, Darkhan only took in half a vial before he blew up to high heaven, that is some potent drug there. The tainted water of the Sunwell. My oh my, Athas was surprised, he was indeed planning to look for this before heading back, but it seems like Valira read his mind and scavenged it from the bit and pieces of Darkhan. Chapter 22, Chapter 7, Scourge End, What Light Beyond. After torching down the Scourge Fortress of Deathholmes, Athas and Valira returned home to Tranquillion in high spirit, Athas more so for the fact that not only he found a vial of Sunwell water, albeit a bit tainted, but in the end it is still the water from the Sunwell. As for Valira, she was more happy with the fact that she can be somewhat useful for Athas and was able to defend him against his enemies. 1. And of course, there are much more spoils than just that one vial of Sunwell water, for example, bits and pieces of Darkhan Drathir collections. Just before his soul was claimed by the Shadowland, Athas made use of his knowledge in necromancy and forced the former Magister's soul to linger a bit longer. For his own purposes, Athas made sure to strip everything of that undead elf head soul before completely breaking it down and turned it into his own source of power. And there was plenty left within the now annihilated Magister. What is your little secret? Athas questioned the little musty tome in his hand, which depicted a wicked bone white skull, smiling at him. If reading the memory of Darkhan Drathir told him anything, the trial of death is more than it actually let on. For once Athas know that there is no way in hell that this is just the work of Kel'Thuzad. There must be a higher power at work here, but what is the question? This is very troublesome, yet entreating at the same time. Athas muttered to himself as he swirled the vial of viscous black liquid within the vial, which occasionally let out howling of agony * creepy. Tilda while Athas was busy with his discovery and such before returning home to Tranquillion, another conspiracy was brewing in the great dark beyond, the twisting netherrealm of the demons and the burning legions that reside within. The broken isle of Exiel-Nadar, formerly a piece of a planet named Exiel-Nadar, but was destroyed by the burning legion and reduced to mere space rubble floating in the empty void eons ago. Now it is nothing more than a mobile fortress for the legion and its commander, Wilganese the Corruptor, a Nathrajim Doom Lord. From out of the void a space rift opened up and the figure of Hextraxis and countless of his demonic minions were flung out crashing onto the abyssal rocks below. Damn! Mortals! Hextraxis cursed as the mass-banished scroll flung him from across the cosmos into the demonic stronghold of Exiel-Nadar. Hextraxis swore vengeance on the damn mortal that dared to play this trick onto him. Athas, the blood elf. Will you shut up already? From out of nowhere, an imp skipped forward in an arrogant manner and slapped the dreadlord across the face. At first the slap might not look as threatening, but it was until it landed that Hextraxis finally felt true terror from within. The powerful slap knocked out a few of his fangs and along it a horn. Why you little maggot, for a dreadlord, having a horn broken was a true disgrace. If it was their kind, the victim would have sued the perpetrator to the court and requested a duel. But for anyone else, no less a lesser race for that matter, the only outcome is death. Rage and ruthlessness clouded his mind as Hextraxis brought down his fist on the little imp. * slap. Only to be once again slapped across the face and having his remaining horn broken. Oh! Hextraxis' howl of agony sug across the isle of Exiel-Nadar, causing many low-intelligent demonic beings to flee in fear. I will kill you. His voice stops as he looks at the imp, now morphed into a female humanoid being with bat-like wings, like himself a Nathrajim. No, you, why are you here? Why, no longer showing off his arrogance and fury, Hextraxis covered as he gazed upon the female dreadlord burning green eyes, and overwhelming pressure came crushing down onto his body, nailing the pitiful dreadlord to the abyssal rock. SHHH, for now, all you need to do is to die for me. She grinned sadistically at the pitiful dreadlord underneath her hoof. No. You cannot kill me. You can never kill me. Our law dictate no Nathrism shall murder another. You will pay with your life, shall you do so? Hextraxis shouts in panic. It is true, the codex of the Nathrism forbade them from turning against one another. It is their supreme taboo, one to never cross. Who said I'm going to finish the job that my master didn't? She smirked before a group of chivalrous appeared from the shadow with blades gleaming in an airy glow. One of them looked at him in pure, absolute hatred. This one has only 5 arms, instead of the usual 6 of which a chivalra had. 1. It's you. Why are you here? Hextraxis shouted, this time in sheer, absolute terror. Oh, you actually remember this lowly one? This one thought she was only a mere insect in your grey size. My, it's such a surprise how the situation could turn out to be like this. The chivalra coldly laughs. You have no idea how happy this one was when the mistress offered this one the opportunity. Her blades crossed across the pitiful dreadlord neck. No. This cannot be happening. You cannot kill me. Without me. Who will command the army in the next coming assault against the light? The female dreadlord placed her finger against the lip of Hextraxis while whispering, SHHH. You are not needed. I have found the perfect replacement. She smiled as the light from Hextraxis' eyes faded and his head rolled on the cold, hard, abyssal rock. A demon that once died in the twisting nether can never be revived again, unless they meet a certain condition which they will never ever come across. Back on Azeroth, Ghostlands in the now prospered town of Tranquillion. You did what? Theramir screamed from the top of his lungs after finding out what Athas and Valera did for the day. It turned out his little boy, barely 15 years of age, went out and slayed the Scourge local leader. Instead of a picnic with one of his trained ranger and assumed to be future daughter-in-law. 4. Geez Dad, you don't have to be so loud, almost ruptured an eardrum there. Athas cast a silence spell to mute his father, ranting for a good minute. Before the man noticed it, he unmute him. You know how dangerous that was. And why the hell didn't you invite me to the fun? Theramir went berserk because they didn't invite him? And the title, Dad of the Year, shall be awarded to Tilda 1. You would be disappointed, so I didn't invite you. Darkhandrathir wasn't that much of a big deal. Athas sneered, thinking about the now deceased, permanently Magister, who got himself murdered, not once, not twice, but thrice by a bunch of kids. So can we focus on Zul'jin and his Amani trolls? Athas changed the topic. Since the Ghostland Scourge leader is now dead and the undead of the region is in complete disarray, they should strike the iron while it's still hot and completely cleanse the entire zone of threats itself, which lead to the Amanis, the archenemies of the High Elves, now Blood Elves of Quel'Thalas. Theramir frowned at hearing the name that his son mentioned. Zul'jin? You mean the former warlord of the Amani tribe? We don't have to worry about him, he's dead for years now. The only problem is the local subordinate tribes stirred up once in a while. At his father's words, Athas was very surprised. He's dead. Now that makes the whole situation a lot more simpler, and cheaper too. No need to hire a group of greedy mercenaries to raid Juliman or any of that sort. Yes. And now after hearing about the death of Darkhandrathir, I can finally dedicate all of our manpower, the one we used to keep the Scourge at bay, onto the Amani tribes. Theramir showed his toothy grin. Chapter 23, Chapter 8, Reclamation. The future ahead. After Athas and Valera little picnic with the local Scourge leader, Theramir and his Farstrider, along with the Forsaken allies, had finally eradicated most of the remnant of the Ghostland Scourge force influenced, along with pushing the local forest trolls population back to their ancient capital of Juliman and created some form of peace at last. However, it did not come without the cost of many lives which had been sacrificed to drive back the ruthless trolls, namely from the Farstrider, local militia and the Forsaken allies. Their sacrifice will be honored. A few months had passed and Athas was officially 15 years of age. What a surprise, one actually became an adult the moment they reached 15 within this world. Now, Athas is finally allowed to leave his home and travel as an adventurer. Legally, instead of having to commit himself to an institution like the Mages Academy of Dalaran or as such. And thus, his new goal has changed from just venture to Dalaran for more magical training, possible under one of the council member, to just venture the world itself and discover what this version of Azeroth has to offer, plus for the fact that even having the slightest knowledge of necromancy in the magical kingdom of Dalaran could have dire consequences, all thanks to the mage Kel'Thuzad. Other than that, Athas want to visit Arcanist itself and have a conversation with a Death Knight and possibly study on them for his own use, but alas, that goal is too far-fetched as they could absolutely, positively murder him on the spot as they are still under the command of the Lich King at this very moment. But soon, the world shall burn. Wait, no, scratch that idea. Athas murmurs to himself, alone in his little laboratory. As for why he is in his laboratory, Athas is currently doing some study on the vial of tainted Sunwell water, hoping to harness the power within and discover its mystery, more on the line of hoping to purify a trace of the water from the Well of Eternity, that is. As for the trial of death that Darkhan keep rambling on about, it's just a jumble of messy quests that Athas has no clue on where to start. Even the undead elf didn't know what after other than collecting artifacts from other holder, which include the Book of the Dead that Athas held onto. Too much efforts for little to unknown gains. Perhaps more can be found in Northrend, but it's suicide to just sail there. After scribbling down a few more notes, Athas promptly closed his book and put it back on one of the shelves before heading out of the laboratory and headed into town. Tranquillion and the entirety of Ghostlands had become a whole lot more peaceful after months of constant purging and butchering of both Scourge and Armani trolls. They even had already implemented the plans on reclaiming past civilization points such as the surrounding villages and fields. They had achieved what Quel'Thalas could not do in decades within the matter of a year or two, earning the love and trust of the local population and soon-to-be immigrants of this land. Good afternoon, Athas. Here, an apple for you. The fruit vendor, which was a blood elven lady, gifted a fresh shiny apple from her stall. Looks like business has been pretty good lately, as there was a crowd near the stall, waiting for their purchases. They also greeted him as Athas went past them. Now that everything has been taken care of, especially securing his family position and prosperity for futures to come, Athas felt like a great burden has been lifted from his shoulder. Now, what to do next? Being a great fan of the Warcraft universe in his past life, Athas pondered on what is the next action he should take, before the rise of the Lich King and all hell broke loose once again. Maybe he should start a journey across Azeroth and see the world, possibly getting even stronger and prepare for incoming disaster that he and his family going to spiral toward, notably the Lich King Scourge, the aspect of death, Garrosh Hellscream and his Horde and Iron Horde, the Burning Legion plus all the bullshit that came along with World War IV. After strolling a bit longer, Athas decides to head back home to plan out his next move. Since everything in Ghostlands is done, perhaps it is time for him to leave home and venture out. There are many choices. He could either head to Lordaeron, the capital of the former Alliance of Lordaeron, before Athas stab his father in the chest with Frostmourne. 2. There is so much he wanted to do, for example touring it, possibly having the chance of seeing the Dark Lady, and exploring Silverpine and possibly infiltrating the Kingdom of Gilneas, as they are currently on lockdown right now due to their Virgin issue. For once, Athas doesn't have a clue about the current world situation, other than the fact that Kel'Thas has already returned from Outland, but as for anything else, such as Gilneas' situation or that of the Eastern Kingdoms in general, not a single clue. But he is about to find out. Perhaps making a trip to Silvermoon and taking a quick teleportation to the Undercity might not sound so bad after all, or better yet, learn the teleportation and portal spells. Athas was sure there would be a mage or two in Silvermoon who are adept with such art, seeing how it was mostly the Blood Elves mages that were responsible for transporting troops magically in the Horde, or that is what he saw in the game anyways. For that, he has to ask his teacher for expertise on who to look for. Later that evening at the dining table, where everyone in the family had gathered, Theramar and his wife, Athas' mom, Valira, she lived with them now, and finally the old Kootsan reach. I've decided, I will be going on a journey. His words were like a bombshell dropping from a gnome flying machine onto the dining table. The utensils were dropped, everyone went silent at his decision. Are you sure you can handle yourself, alone out there, boy? His father's tone changed. After all the hell you've been through, if I had a say in anything, you are going to get yourself killed, and don't even start mentioning magic. What good will it do if you were to be surrounded? A good cut across the neck and you would have been dead. I disagree. He looked at Athas with eyes blazing green. Not unless you can beat me in a one-on-one fight in melee, otherwise, forget about setting foot out of Ghostlands. Theramar picked up his fork and went back to chewing his juicy steak. Yep, defeating this ogre wearing the skin of a blood elf will be a tough challenge, and for once Athas isn't confident, especially in a melee fight with blades and blunts. Thus, there must be another way to go about this, escaping in the middle of the night? Or magically charmed his dad and went on his business. There are many magical means to do so. Unconsciously, Athas glanced at Valira, who is silently eating her vegetable. He secretly slid into her dish as she sat by his side, before turning to Professor Sunreach, enjoying a bit of coffee. This old elf isn't going to sleep tonight, is he? The coffee of this world are very potent. Chapter 24, Chapter 9, The Secret of Portals 1. A week after Athas' announcement, saying that he wished to leave home and go on a journey and being promptly rejected by his father, Theramar, for being too helpless in a fight, well, in a sense that is true. Being a magic caster in a melee fight is a big disadvantage and all, but was he ever going to be alone? Being a part-time warlock has its advantage, especially for one who went the path of demonology. So what if they charge at him in a melee fight? I hope you can get past my Void Walker. Or a literal army of imps at his disposal. Plus the enhancement on summoning, a blessing of Fiend Fellow, makes his summoning ability even more ridiculous. Too bad his father doesn't know or really care about it for that matter. To Theramar, one's own physical strength against his enemies is the best bet, a sure win method, well considering he's more on the fact of him acting like someone who is an ogre in elvish skin than an actual, normal blood elf warrior. Not many can confidently claim they can best Theramar in a fist fight or just a fight in general, man-to-man fighting for that matter here in Ghostlands. There has to be another way, maybe this is a test. No, this is definitely a test of some sort. Theramir did say that unless Athas can defeat him, he is not going to set foot out of the Ghostlands. Athas showed a goofy grin. Now is the time to finally delve deeper into his mage study, more specifically, portal and teleportation magics. He already had a rough idea of how such magic works, albeit he hasn't tested his hypothesis out just yet, fearing of teleporting directly inside a wall, or worse into someone. Now that is going to be quite a beautiful scene. It is similar to the mage blink spell, however this is on a totally different level. Instead of just teleporting to anywhere within 10 to 20 feet radius, portals and teleportations can directly transfer him across the continent or worlds if needed be. And that is his secret on how to escape, to use the upgraded version of Blink to get directly to Silvermoon, or best case scenario, Lordaeron, Orgrimmar or anywhere else on Kalimdor might be a bit too far-fetched for his understanding as of now. Let's see, Blink utilized the pathway of magic particles in the air as a key point, combining that with temporal and space translocation to shift the user's entire body to that one point. Athas quickly read through his old note. The use of spatial coordinate using mana as a source for Blink, *clap, he closed the old notebook hard, finally achieved his enlightenment. If Blink can be achieved through the nearby mana particles, then teleport should be using the ley line. Yes! The ley line. Why the hell haven't I thought about it until now, to teleport, instead of using the mana particles as a guide? He should instead focus his energy on traversing through the ley line itself to reach his destination. He knows for a fact that all major cities of the world are built on top of a ley line. It is important since it's the lifeblood of all mages to draw their power from. Since that is the case, let's test out my theory. Summoning his trusted staff, Athas summoned a magical runic circle beneath him and drew power from the ley line directly, boosting his senses even further. That is, right there, he focused his mind onto the ley line current and followed it northward, towards Silvermoon, as it is the closest city and probably the safest location to be in if things were to go south with his spell. Now, rip open for me. The magical power gathered around Athas began to tear into the fabric of space, folding the distances between his location and that of Silvermoon Palace to just a mere footstep away. I did it, *boom. As soon as he celebrated, the spell began to fizzle out and all the energy gathered began to unleash itself in a blinding surge of mana light, basically turning his spire into a miniature sun with the dark of night, giving the inhabitant of Tranquillion quite a late night light show. Mama! It's beautiful, isn't it? A blood elf girl, looked to be 5 or 6 years of age, pointed at the sun in the night. SHHH, don't look, the young lord might be a wise and powerful man, however he is a bad influencer. If anything, don't do crazy things like that in the future, for mommy. Okay, the mother chided her child. Tilda, the little girl smiled gingerly. Unbeknown to the mother, she had been influenced by the big bad wolf and would become the future, eccentric, wizard mage. 1. Inside Silvermoon Palace in the dead of night. *boom. The same blinding light that lit up Ghostland's Tranquillion spire made its appearance in a form of a surprise, blinding all the servants and woke up half the city before setting off an invasion alarm that riled up the entire army that was stationed within the city wall. What in the world? Inside of his study, Grand Magister Romath peeks out of his window, seeing a blinding sun coming from the palace and couldn't help but to raise an eyebrow. Grand Magister Romath, the leader of the Magi of Silvermoon and one who held the title of Archmage, like that of Athas, Sunreaver. With just sensing the mana disturbances from the air, Romath can already tell that there was a powerful mage trying to create a portal directly to the old marked coordinate on the ley line, which previously used for teleportation. However, judging from the explosion of mana currents, Romath can tell that, whoever this mage is, he or she is not very proficient in the arts of teleportations and portals. Amateurs. Romath scoffed as he returned to his studying. His current priority is figuring out a way to purify the ghostlands of the scourge taint. Back in Tranquillion, Athas' little shows managed to woke everyone up and rile the garrison, putting them all on high alerts, but unlike Silvermoon, Tranquillion was already numb to all of Athas' experiment and thus, they returned to their usual business of whatever they're doing that night, either a night stroll, couples rumbling in their bedroom or just plain old boring guards' duties. Much better could be said for Athas' situation, as the little explosion of mana due to the portal collapsing onto itself was a bit too unexpected and harmless to say the least. Much to his displeasure, it looks like he has to seek help for this little issue if he ever wants to freely explore the world and universe safely, and definitely not trapping himself in a rift between worlds or wars, inside a wall or someone else. The first thought that came to his mind on who to look for was none other than his teacher, the old warlock mage, Professor Sunreach. Surely a master warlock must have some form of mastery over such matters, not accounting his side hobbies of studying into the arcane arts. For now, I need my sleep, that was too damn exhausting. It takes a lot of power to actually open up a portal and maintain it for just that short duration. Even with the power of the ley lines right under his feet, it is very taxing for a first-timer like himself. for some odd reason, it felt like Athos just popped his cherries for trying space magic for the first time, in like ever. Well, technically being transmigrated over might count as one, but he definitely had no knowledge of that, other than getting hit by a train, and unlike the old Xiao Yu, he definitely does not wish to be hit by a train or deep-run tramp. Chapter 25, Chapter 10, The Meeting. Studying and understanding the magic behind how teleportation and portal operate gave Athos a deep understanding on how to improve his mastery over the art. Athos, you need to focus or else the gathering mana will collapse in on itself once again. Professor Sunreach pointed out, since the little explosion of magical energy a while back, Sunreach had come to a conclusion that it is better off to supervise and involve himself into most if not all of Athos' experimentation if possible. Less there's that chance of him blowing half if not the entire town into the great beyond. I'm trying. Maintaining control is harder than it looks. Athos shouted as he tried to force the power from collapsing and blow up the spire. It looks like we might have to come up with something else. That's enough, you can dissipate the mana now. Professor Sunreach quickly went to his notebook and began flipping through the pages. Seeing that the professor no longer bothers with the experiment, Athos slowly lets the mana collapse in on itself and dissipate into the ley line below them. Like what? An anchor. Athos scrambled his head. Never in his life had anything made him struggle like this before. The mage players in the game, along with NPCs, made it look so easy too. Maybe it's not the greatest idea to compare himself with battle-hardened veterans mages and people mentioned in the same line as Khadgar or Janna Proudmoore. Not a bad idea. I can try to come up with a design for a portal stage, perhaps redirecting the leyline current and making it constantly supplying the portal. We can keep it open permanently or perhaps for a very long time. The old professor delved deeper into the topic as he pulled on his little scrub of chin hairs. Athos let out a deep long sigh before heading off. He and the old man had locked themselves up in the spire since sunrise. The moon is already high in the sky. Somewhere on a hill, Athos sat there contemplating about his life thus far, looking at the stars and moon in silence. Thinking on how you are going to run away, Athos, from out of the shadow, Valeera once more revealed herself. Yup, there is so much to see in the world, I don't want to be held back and stay here for the rest of my life. And plus, there are people and things out there that need to be destroyed and removed, in order to secure my peace. Athos thought of the future, expansions. Valeera stared at him in silence. Is it so bad staying home with your parents and me? She asked. No, it is not about that. I honestly would not mind doing that. However, there are those out there that threaten my peace and family security. I need to get stronger if I want to prevent all of the future disaster from occurring. For a moment his voice went frosty, even though Athos, the former Xiao Yu, was a good man who helped others, such as how helping a kid from getting squashed by a train ended him here. However, it doesn't mean he won't do everything in his power to keep what precious to him safe from harm, such as in this life, for example, his families and friends. The past life Xiao Yu was nothing more than orphan. He had to work hard for everything he wanted in his life. Do you think I'm a bad person for doing everything in my power to seek out and destroy those who see my family and friends in harm's way? He asked her. Perhaps living his life here in a war-torn world changed him. Whatever your choice is, I will always be on your side. Valeera's determination has somewhat reached beyond what can be called normal loyalty. To her, Athos is the one person that can be considered her light after the Sanctum incident. Thank you, Valeera. I trusted you. He smiled. Thus this fueled his determination. Athos returned to his laboratory, ready to put in more time and effort along with a couple more theories onto the testing table. Valeera looked at Athos back as he disappeared back into the town. Valeera did not know what kind of future, nor danger that Athos had foreseen. However, she too would need more power if she would ever have the chance of helping Athos. Long after Athos returned to the spire he called his laboratory, Valeera remained behind. In her hand was a glowing glass-like abyssal rock with a shadowy mist escaping from it once in a while. She stared at it deeply, clenching her fist, only to let out a long sigh and stuffed it back into the present that Athos had gifted her before, an enchanted satchel. Early the next morning, Athos alone stood in front of a stone platform, built by him and his demonic servants throughout the entire night. We did it. This should do the tricks, hopefully. Yawn. He yawned. After his little chat with Valeera the night prior, it strangely gave him some motivation to finish his work, rewiring the leyline magic using a formation of sorts. Well, you all can return now. I will summon you once again when assistance is needed, and with a wave of his hand, all the imps in the room are banished back to the twisting nether, in a nice way, unlike what Hextraxis experienced. After all the imps were returned to the twisting nether, Athos held up his staff and began channeling his magic into the platform. Soon the stone formation began to lit up as it came into life and a small window to a location revealed itself. The path to Silvermoon awaits, or hopefully it's Silvermoon and not somewhere else. In the end, Athos was quite baffled on the fact that his father, Theramir, is letting this little crazy experimentation keep going like this for weeks already. Even if he told the guards and the man himself that they were only experimenting on volatile subjects, with his own power, Theramir could very well already discover what Athos was up to and could immediately shut down the project. Well, that is it. We now have an open channel to civilization and could freely transport people back and forth from their hometown, directly to the capital, or so he hoped. Huh. However, something unexpected soon happened. The portal began to somewhat fizzled out and began a mass of instability and exploded in a sphere shape before enlarging itself. Luckily it didn't explode, but what left was a mass of glowing energy that somewhat resembled a large, spherical unstable portal. More records to be taken down onto the notebook it is. The phenomenon baffled him and thus the scholarly blood in his vein began to rage as he quickly scribbled down more notes as he witnessed the hazardous event about to unfold. But as he was about to finish up his writing, something came flying out of the portal and kneed him right in the face, knocking the light out of him. The last thing he saw was a female human with white hair tied up in a ponytail carrying a two-handed sword on her back. Hold on, what the fuck just happened? That was his last thought before the darkness overtook him, followed by a clashing of steel against steel. Chapter 26, Chapter 1, Far From Home. The sound of steel against steel clashing against one another awoke in Athas, much to his now sore and somewhat injured of receiving a knee in the face. Is this one of those so-called portals that open up at the wrong place and at the wrong time? Athas rubbed his sore nose as he witnessed two ladies fighting tooth and nails against one another. He didn't know how long he was out for, but his laboratory is good as done, that is for sure. One is obviously Valira, while the other is, possibly the most strange but yet amusing one at the moment. Human. How did you infiltrate this place and injure its future lord? Wait, what? Speak before I gut you like a murloc. Valira's tone was quite venomous to their current target, a girl with white hair holding a long sword. 1. Prohibere. Pugnare tecum nolo esse accidentis. Much to Athas' displeasure, it seemed like the girl could not understand them and used her tongue against theirs instead. This might pose a problem. As the two girls stared daggers at one another, Athas was minding his own business by digging through his bookshelf on the side, looking for one particular grimoire. It wasn't long before he found it. Al-Shalar-Knalinguist, reciting the awkward language from the book while channeling his mana in a certain formula, he casted the spell over himself and one for the white-hair girl. Stop this. It was an accident. The white-hair girl dodged the flying knives flying toward her. The power behind those tiny knives are terrifying as they managed to impale and stuck to the stone. That work? Athas was surprised himself, never in his mind that he thought such a spell would actually work on a human, albeit he had his doubts before. The spell Athas casted was obviously the spell name Arcanist. Wait, I can understand you now. The girl was now baffled at the turn of events. One moment she was running away by opening a portal, and suddenly needs someone in the face which then triggered a fight and now understanding speeches through the use of magic? Can we both stop this now? I'm sure this was all an accident, right? Please don't soil my study with blood, Valira, please. Athas looks at the white-hair girl with his glowing purplish eyes before looking at his overprotective guardian. 1. Yes. It was all an accident. I didn't mean to intrude into your study. I only meant to escape my pursuer, the white-hair human girl exclaimed. Valira only narrowed her glowing green eyes at the human, before turning her attention to Athas. Very well, but I will be keeping an eye on you. She glared at the human. It wasn't long before her gaze immediately tendered itself when she focused back on Athas, trying to treat his injured face, specifically a bloody nose. So, mind introducing us on who you are? Human. Athas' emphasis on the word human, ironically, he was formerly one. IERM. Siri, I'm Siri, but where is this place? She asked, looking curiously at Athas' laboratory, meant for volatile experimentations. 3. Athas only facepalmed himself, asking himself what kind of universe had been reincarnated into. First it was a Nonkin on Azeroth, then a Siri suddenly magically jumped through his portal. 4. But before that, how in the world did you manage to jump through my portal? And need me in the face? Athas questioned her. He just wanted to make sure that this is the Siri. I was hoping to return home through a portal, she said, albeit somewhat nervous at Athas and Valira's airy glowing eyes. And where is this portal? He continued. It's called Tower of the Swallow. You might not have heard of it. It's on the shore of Tarn Mira, a lake in the Miltracta region. In the elder speech, it is called Torzidil. She answered. Huh, that is surprising. Athas winced. Now his theory is 100% confirmed. You know where that is, Athas? Valira looked at Athas' own expression, noticing that he might have heard of where that place is. Yes. I do, as a matter of fact. He rubbed the ridge between his eyes. Siri, my friend, you are very far from home. Athas, formerly Xiao Yu, didn't just play World of Warcraft with a passion, he liked to play other games as well, not to be a one-trick pony, especially during those maintained hours on every Tuesday and every other day of surprises. What do you mean? Where is this place? The human girl, Siri, was taken aback. Well, all I could say is, welcome to Quel'Thalas, formerly home of the High Elves, now Blood Elves, in the world of Azeroth. Athas' words were like a naked strapped with grape shots dropping on her head. Dash 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 dash. Ciri, or better known as Cirilla Fiona Ellen Rhiannon, sole heir to the throne of Sintra, were actually trying to get back to Thunid in Temeria. However, things did not go as planned when she was once again attacked by a bounty hunter by the name of Bonheart, only narrowly escaped to the tower by the intervention of a group of wraith-like beings named the Wild Hunts, which scared off Bonheart horse and allowed her time to rush into the tower. As for why the Wild Hunts showed up as it did, she did not know, but she doubted that it would be of nothing good. She was hoping of returning to Temeria. She almost returned to Thunid through the teleportation, only to suddenly be hit by a random giant sphere of energy midway that swallowed her whole, and before she knew it, she had assaulted a weird elf with glowing eyes with her knee. Which now brought her back to the current situation. Dash 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 dash. Huh. Ciri's reaction to Aetha's words was beyond priceless, even her face showed it all. Instead of going back to Temeria like she thought it would be, Ciri somehow ended up on Azeroth instead, with a bunch of weird, eyes-glowing elves in the kingdom of Quel'Thalas. I know, quite a shocker isn't it? Aethas chuckled. This somehow had turned into quite a funny scenario. Now, if you please do me a favor, leave my laboratory. I have much work to finish and I recommend that you not show yourself as a human when you leave. The Sindore have quite a distaste for humans. He pointed her out the door. How am I supposed to go back? At least tell me that much. She raised her voice against Aethas, much to Valira's displeasure. How should I know? You intruded on me and my portal experimentation. Aethas played it off and continued on with his day, knowing that his theory was indeed correct. All he needed was an anchor point, which meant the magical formation itself and a bit of time to actually perfect his mastery. Sure, having the owner of the Elder Blood around was quite amusing. However, the last thing Aethas wants is a bunch of xenophobic slave-hunting elves from a near-dead world knocking at his doorsteps every now and then. Of course, he could kick their ass, more on the line of his father Theramir doing so, but it was too much of a hassle, so it's better off to just send her on her way, and hopefully she one day grasp that ability and leave on her own. She looked at him with eyes filled to the brim with indignation, like she had been wronged. What? Don't look at me with that eyes, I can't help you. I'm not even good with portal magic at this point, so go find someone else, okay? Aethas twitched his eyebrow looking at this human girl. Since when did one of such a beloved character become so pathetic? 8. Chapter 27, Chapter 2, of Ebon and Roses. Aethas felt somewhat helpless looking at this pathetic human before his eyes. Alright, fine. I'll help you. Aethas facepalmed himself. He hated himself for being such a good person. However, I want something in return, he stated. Who would actually do this free of charge? Especially when involving such a top-heavy project as to open a portal to another world, if not universe. Ciri looked at Aethas with eyes filled with suspicion. And what is your demand? She asked with a tone filled with caution. You are going to pay back what you owed me. Aethas' eyes twitched in pain as he looked at the damage caused by this feisty little human. He couldn't really call her that by going with his own physical age right now, since she is probably older than him, that's for sure. But deep down, Aethas is an old uncle in his 30s already. What do you mean by, owed you? Ciri was confused by Aethas' words. She thought maybe the magical translation came out wrong. Look at your surroundings. Do you know how much all of these cost me? Aethas pointed at all the wreckage that the girls made while he was unconscious. How much do they cost? Ciri asked nonchalantly. She believed that it couldn't be worth that much, hopefully. Hearing that, Aethas quietly took out his accountant booklet and began flipping through the tiny pages, calculating all the damages cost. That would be a total of 11,944 standard gold coins, a reply that shocked even Valira. Deep down Aethas scoffed, just 12,000 golds? I could make 10 times that amount running all the raids from Cataclysm to Warlords of Draenor. To most inhabitants of the current reality Azeroth, 12,000 golds is an unimaginable number. With that amount one can purchase a plot of fertile lands and build a mansion on it with some golds left to spare for retirement. To note, an average family income at most only made around 50 golds annually. All these equipment were possible because of his mother's effort in her trades company and all the sweet deals she made here in the Ghostlands. How much? Ciri could only stutter after hearing the total amount. 11,944 standard gold coins, you know? The 99.98% pure gold coins. Aethas tries his best to repeat his words to the stuttering human before him. I'm not dealing with this crap. If you don't have the money, pay with your body. Aethas scoffed, looking out his window and seeing that the sun's already up. What? Huh? Both Ciri and Valira yelped at the same time after hearing what Aethas had to say on how Ciri can repay her debt. Ciri choked on her own spit though. Aethas raised an eyebrow. What? If she can't pay me back in gold, I expect her to work here until she pays it off. He honestly did not know what got them so riled up. Oh, so it's like that. Ciri added on while Valira only let out a sigh of relief. She was really planned on spilling some blood on the carpet. Other than that, my new servant, I forbid you from setting foot outside of this tower unless I give my permission. Aetha's emphasis on the two words, trying to get their meaning through the barrier of language. Later that morning, there's no point in going to sleep anymore, the sun is up. Aethas was having breakfast with the family, Valira included. They decide that it's for the best if they just lock up the entire spire with Ciri included. Where's mom? He asked his father, Theramar, who is currently drinking wine. She's on her way to Silver Moon. Your aunt is asking for her help with a deal, business-related stuff, too complicated for me. He dismissed it. He raised an eyebrow for a moment there. They had family in Silver Moon? And when did his mother leave? She left a day ago. I sent a small group of Farstrider to escort her there, just in case they ran into wretches or wild beasts, he added. That's good to hear. Even though the ghostlands are relatively safe now, danger still presides over the land. If formerly the scourge would get you, then it's most likely to be either beasts or wretches now. Worst case it'll be bandits. But over the years, the Farstrider of Ghostlands had built a reputation for themselves in being merciless to their enemies. As known through their skirmishes with the local trolls, thus it built quite a deterrent point for any possible hostile. Teacher, I need to have a word with you later. It involves one of our more volatile experimentation. Aethas then turned his attention to the old elf who's enjoying his morning coffee in peace, seeming like he had a good night's sleep. Who doesn't love volatile experiments that could blow half the town into dust first thing in the morning, right? Aethas wonders if that's sarcasm or not. Somewhere in Eversong Woods, a small entourage seems to be on their ways toward the capital city of Silver Moon, just a few short hours ahead. The one who witnessed this was a group of armored figures on pale steeds, donning armors depicting themselves as one of the dead. Sir, I think they would make perfect slaves to serve us, especially that one there. One of the figures holding a staff pointed at a female Sindore in the middle of a heavily armed convoy. But a few things still bothered me. What world had we landed in? It felt very strange, and why are the elves here look so different from us? I thought all elves originated from our world, yet they look nothing like us, he continued. How should I know? Aren't you a scholar? A navigator? Maybe you should break open a few more books, probably find your answer in there, the leader scoffed before turning to a horrifying scene behind him. A small group consists of 5 more beings, just like him. Alongside them was a small band of blood elves tied up and gagged. They whimpered in fear as they felt their gaze upon them. Let's focus on capturing this last batch and returning home. This world gives me a sickening feeling. Compared to their world of NL, the amount of magic that saturates this world is beyond his comprehension. It might be a paradise for any mages, however to him, the feeling is like a sickness within his stomach. You two, stay with the slaves. As for the rest, he mounted on the undead steed while drawing his great meter-long blade. Dergroa 3. With me, and with the command, they charged through. These ghostly riders are known as the Red Rider. In their tongue, they were in charge of traversing across the multiverse to hunt for slaves to serve in their majestic kingdom. Today is their final mission for this world as they had been stationed within this strange little world for far too long, roughly a week per se. Unbeknown to the mortals, there was a little shift in the timeline. Other Farstrider guards, who they claimed to be,